92nd SKOCH Summit, the India Economic Forum. I would request everyone to please rise for the national anthem.
जनगण अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you. I would now like to invite Dr. Gursharan Dhanjal, Vice Chairman, SKOCH Group, onto the stage.
Thank you, Yash. We often hear of champions. But champions are not born, they are made. Champions' feats are acquired, they are not inherited. And so it's not transferred. So what does it take to make a champion? Beyond vision, it is the right mindset. It is the passion, it's grit and commitment. And this is precisely what we are celebrating today. So we have many number of champions amongst us present who have come from all around the country, who have pushed the envelope, taken the country from point A to point B, having made a difference. I'm reminded of Mahatma Gandhi's quote, who had said that the champions are made of something which is part of themselves. It is a dream, it is a desire, and it is a vision. We call it beacons of hope. That hope which has been ordained into everything that has been implemented on the ground. SKOCH has been working in the area of social, digital, and financial inclusion for several decades, which is equal to inclusive growth. This is something which gets translated as, in today's parlance, as Samriddha Bharat, Sashakt Bharat, Swasth Bharat, Sushikshit Bharat, and so on and so forth. Not been easy to achieve. From inclusive growth, it takes us in the direction of inclusive India. And the people propelling it, pushing it further, are our beacons of hope, and these are you. Since 2003, which is 2 decades, we have been assessing such interventions on the ground, which are outcome-based. And we, as SKOCH, have been the only organization in this country which has had a history of watching, writing, and observing the impact on the ground that it has made of intervention since 2003. Having to say, more than 50,000 projects have been evaluated, studied, and documented. Translate that into, even if we were spending 5 to 6 hours over one project, which goes through the evaluation, which goes through a popular vote, which goes through a documentation, and further seeking information and interaction which lasts over 4 months, which majority of you have already experienced. Meaning that the number of hours get multiplied as much. Nearly 15,000 man days which have already gone into it. And if you look at these hours and translate into the monetary value, you will realize that if it is calculated what KPMGs and the PwCs of the world would charge today, it will run into hundreds of crores of rupees. So that has been our give back to the nation. Of course, would not have been possible if you did not equally well participated in it. It has also served two purposes. It has helped us create institutional memory. If you were a district collector in the year 2005, 2006 somewhere, and today a principal secretary somewhere, and would like to see as to what you did, probably you would have forgotten yourself, but if you did participate in SKOCH evaluation, then you could refer back and say that this is what you achieved. SKOCH evaluated projects scale and get replicated. So this is the other outcome. Another outcome is that millions of rupees are saved by preventing the reinvention of wheel, which otherwise everyone invests in time, effort, and money. So ladies and gentlemen, let me warmly welcome you once again to this 92nd SKOCH Summit, which celebrates all the heroes from fintech, from banking and financial services industry, from governance, and the public sector undertakings, without which nation would not have moved forward. Prime Minister Modi has given a clarion call for India to become a developed nation by 2047. Without much realization, if you look back, you have greatly contributed to India reaching where we are today. And accelerating from here is only something which is what we all promised to do. Thank you very much for being with us, and Jai Hind.
Thank you. I would like to invite Dr. Dhanjal again for the SKOCH Order of Merit. I would also like to invite Mr. UK Sharma, Senior Fellow, SKOCH Development Foundation, and former advisor, Planning Commission and Niti Aayog. I would also like to invite Dr. G.P. Gupta, former Comptroller General of General Accounts, to the stage. Thank you for joining us. In our SKOCH Order of Merit, the first one, Innovation in Lending, goes to Arohan Financial Services Limited, to Mr. Arvind Murarka, Chief Information Officer. I'd like to invite Mr. Murarka to the stage. Next, Financial Inclusion Program, Arohan Financial Services Limited, to Mr. Arvind Murarka, Chief Information Officer. Lending Solution, Arohan Financial Services Limited, Mr. Ranjan Das, Chief Risk Officer. The Order of Merit for Innovation in Lending goes to Asha International Microfinance Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Anjan Das Gupta, Managing Director, to the stage. The Order of Merit for Women FinTech Leader of the Year goes to Ms. Sucheta Mahapatra, Managing Director of Branch International. The SKOCH Order of Merit for Innovation in Crypto goes to CoinDCX. I'd like to invite Mr. Vivek Gupta, CTO, on stage. The SKOCH Order of Merit for Digital Banking Solution goes to Fincare Small Finance Bank. I'd like to invite Mr. Amit Jain, Senior General Manager of Retail Banking. SKOCH Order of Merit for Innovation in InsurTech, InsurTechco, goes to Girnar Insurance Brokers Private Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Ashish Lad, Business Head. Next, the SKOCH Order of Merit for CC Avenue Mobile App goes to Infibeam Avenues Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Abhay Gupta, Manager of Business Development. Dr. Gupta, thank you for your presence today. I would now like to invite Dr. Nirmal Bansal, Senior Fellow, SKOCH Development Foundation and former banker. I would also like to invite Mr. Shashi Sharma, Senior Fellow, SKOCH Development Foundation, to the stage. The SKOCH Order of Merit for Payment Aggregator, CC Avenue, goes to Infibeam Avenues Limited. bill payment solution, Innovati Genie, goes to Innovati Technologies Private Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Ashish Mattal, Vice President, to the stage. The Order of Merit for Peer-to-Peer Lending goes to Monexo FinTech Private Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Ashish Bhubna, Director. The Order of Merit for FitRank goes to Online PSB Loans Limited. I'd like to invite Ms. Sharon Almeida, Assistant Vice President, to the stage. The Order of Merit for PSB Loans at 59minutes.com goes to Online PSB Loans Limited. The next Order of Merit is GST Saheb to Online PSB Loans Limited. The Order of Merit for FinTech Startup of the Year goes to PaySprint Private Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. S. Anand, Founder and CEO, to the stage. The Order of Merit for FinTech Startup of the Year for Rupify Technology Solutions Private Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Dipanshu Sahajpal to the stage. The SKOCH Order of Merit for Lending Startup and Small Business Loan goes to Satya Micro Capital Limited. I'd like to invite Ms. Vandita Kaul, CFO. Thank you, Dr. Bansal. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I would now like to invite Mr. Lalit Chawla, former President, Axis Bank, to the stage. The SKOCH Order of Merit for RegTech Solution goes to Sciency Technologies Private Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Shivanshu Gupta, Associate Director. Scotch Order of Merit for the best fintech growth story goes to Spice Money. I'd like to invite Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, co-founder and CEO, to the stage. The Order of Merit for TCS Digital Financial Inclusion Solution goes to Tata Consultancy Services. I'd like to invite Mr. C.M. Maladi. The Order of Merit for TCS KYC and Analytics Hub goes to Tata Consultancy Services. I'd like to invite Mr. Maladi on stage. The Order of Merit for TCS Digital Lending Platform goes to Tata Consultancy Services. Mr. Maladi. The Order of Merit for Unified Digital Payments and Processing Platform goes to Tata Consultancy Services. The Scotch Order of Merit for Mobile Banking Solution goes to Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. I'd like to invite Ms. Carol Furtado, Chief Business Officer. Scotch Order of Merit for Financial Inclusion Program, FlexPay, goes to Vivify India Finance. I'd like to invite Mr. Anil Pinapala, founder and CEO, to the stage. The Scotch Order of Merit for Innovation in Lending, FlexPay, goes to Vivify India Finance. Mr. Anil Pinapala, founder and CEO. Thank you, Dr. Dhanjal. Thank you, Mr. Chawla. I would now like to invite Mr. Sameer Kochar, Chairman, SKOCH Group, reforms historian and author of Modenomics, to the stage. I would also like to invite Dr. Dhanjal onto the stage. And now for the SKOCH Awards. The first SKOCH Award goes for Women FinTech Leader of the Year to Mr. Cheta Mahapatra, Managing Director of Branch International.
Control, can we have the hand mics on, please?
Yeah, Cheta, would like to say something?
I'm deeply grateful for this award and huge respect for the SKOCH Group, which was always there. But really, really enjoyed the process, the rigor, the thoroughness, and very, very grateful, thankful both to the SKOCH Group, everyone in this room. Thank you.
The next SKOCH Award for Startup and Small Business Loan goes to Satya Micro Capital Limited. I'd like to invite Ms. Vandita Kaul, CFO, onto the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning to all. Thank you so much, SKOCH Group. This is a great honor to be here. At the same time, I would also like to thank our regulators, SROs, who support us in this lending. And last but not the least, the customers, the women entrepreneurs who are able to benefit out of it. Thank you so much.
SKOCH Award for Corporate Performance goes to Spice Money. I'd like to invite Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, co-founder and CEO, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, SKOCH Group, for really acknowledging the work that we've been doing in rural. We've been trying to solve the problem of access for rural consumer, and we work with close to 1.2 million nanopreneurs. So this award also goes to them for relentlessly helping the rural consumer get access to banking and financial services. Thank you so much.
The next SKOCH Award goes to Tata Consultancy Services for TCS Digital Financial Inclusion Solution. I'd like to invite Mr. C.M. Lodi to the stage.
As TCS, we have been working for the last 15 years on bringing the people up to the curve in terms of the bottom of the pyramid to the middle class through our technology solutions in financial inclusion. So we service close to 100 plus financial institutions to help them the technology to the ground, and close to 2.5 lakh points, the BC points, who uses our technology. So we are very thankful to the forum and to the country to provide an opportunity to enable bottom of the pyramid people in the upliftment of their livelihood. Thank you.
The SKOCH Award goes for Unified Digital Payments Processing Platform, goes to Tata Consultancy Services.
This has been an option that happening in India, evolving for the last 10-15 years in India on various payment railroads, starting from RTGS to current UPI and IMPS. What we have done as a platform is to bring in unification of these payments to simplify the journey for the. So it's a platform which any financial institution can connect to and leverage services on the ground. DOs. Thank you.
The SKOCH Award goes to Tata Consultancy Services for TCS Digital Lending Platform.
Thank you.
The SKOCH Award for Company of the Year goes to Tata Consultancy Services.
I'd like to say something. No one really expects companies from our generation to be winning in fintech. You know, it's supposed to be the young guys, the VCs with burning capital and doing all of that. The old world sensible companies are supposed to be, you know, too boring and too lazy to do well. And here is a shining example of TCS that has transformed and is leading fintech. A big round of applause.
The SKOCH Award for Mobile Banking Solution goes to Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. I'd like to invite Ms. Carol Furtado, Chief Business Officer, to the stage.
Thank you, the SKOCH Group, for giving us a platform and recognizing the innovation. And I would also like to thank the team of Ujjivan and their customers for embracing the solution. But however, I would like to also ask the architect of the solution, Deepta Ragdeb, to say a few words on this.
It's a rainy day outside, so I'll keep it short, given the pain that we all have taken to come. Thank you so much for this recognition. I think Hello Jeevan, the app that we are talking about, is one of our attempts to bring a mobile app to the semi-literate and the illiterate. So the whole idea is your mobile apps today expect you to know the language, read and write. This is an app that we have built in-house for this segment. that we serve, the underserved customer, to actually talk to an app, get banking solutions delivered at their fingertips. So thank you for recognizing such an effort, and hopefully we make an impact with it.
The SKOCH Award goes to FlexPay, BFSI Finance India. I'd like to invite Mr. Anil Pinapala on the stage.
I'd like to thank the SKOCH Group, especially Samir Kocharji, for the recognition of the work we are doing in bringing credit access to underserved and unserved communities within India, especially the low-income groups in urban and semi-urban areas. So I appreciate the recognition. Thanks a lot.
That marks the end of the SKOCH FinTech Awards. And now we have the SKOCH Awards for PSUs. Silver, for unique transfer and loading of fully built 250-ton Goliath crane to Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers Limited. I'd like to invite Commander Bhaskar Sen Gupta, Chief General Manager, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. We represent a very old shipyard of the country, over 139 years old, Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers. We have built over 800 ships and 106 warships for the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard. We are deeply honored for being considered for this award. It's a great privilege. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai GRS.
The next SKOCH Award, Bharat Electronics Limited, Gold, for response to COVID-19. I'd like to invite Ms. Nancy James, General Manager.
It's a privilege and honor to receive this gold award from SKOCH Group. I thank you from the bottom of our heart. I represent Bharat Electronics Limited, Defense PSU in India. Our customers are primarily defense, but when the COVID struck us without a notice, the government of India entrusted us to make 30,000 ICU ventilators. So from the time to take that technology to modify it to meet the budget requirements of the government, and then to manufacture 30,000 ventilators in flat 4 months, it was really a great effort by my entire team. I thank the team. I dedicate this to my team who has worked tirelessly to make this happen. Thank you.
The next SKOCH Award, Gold, to Rail Vikas Nigam Limited, for excellent physical and financial performance. I'd like to invite Mr. Rajesh Prasad, Director of Operations.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you to the jury, the Scotch Group, and the India Economy Forum for considering Rail Vikas Nigam Limited for this Gold Award. This is a very young, vibrant, and ready-to-go kind of company. We have graduated to Navratna status in this very month. From local rail infra to global all infra, we have already transformed. We have been performing exceedingly well, and for the last 15 years, this has been rated excellent and outstanding by the Department of Public Enterprises. And if you see the performance of the last 5 years, it is number one as per the ratings given by the Department of Public Enterprises. So we are honored, we are privileged, and we will try to improve our performance in time to come. Thank you, Scotch Group, once again.
The next Scotch Award, Gold to MOIL Limited for Community Development Program. I'd like to invite Mr. Ajit Kumar Saxena.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks to SKOCH organization for choosing us to give this award. This award is dedicated to Team MOIL and the people in community who inspire us to serve more and more. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And now we move on to the Scotch Awards for the Banking and Financial Services. Silver, Punjab Grameen Bank for Employment Generation and Poverty Alleviation. I'd like to invite Mr. Dinesh Kumar Sharma, Chief Manager.
Good morning to all, and thanks to SKOCH Group, and I represent Punjab Grameen Bank, the bank dedicated to rural people for their upliftment in all sectors. Thank you, sir.
Silver to Punjab and Sindh Bank for PSB UNIC Omni-Channel Digital Banking Solution. I'd like to invite Mr. Kolegal Raghavendra to the chair stage.
Thank you, Samir and the team. You have been recognizing the institutions for a long time. I have been a Scotch Award winner earlier also. When I was the chairman of a Gramina Bank, I was so surprised when I saw Gramina banks were never recognized in the BFSI field. But for the first time, Scotch team recognized many of the Gramina banks. I really credit them with all the compliments. And similarly now in the public sector undertaking, we have been recognized for the digital payment solutions that we have developed, which is one of the best in the industry. I once again thank you and my best wishes to your entire team.
Thank you. The next SKOCH Award, Silver, United India Insurance Company for Tamil Nadu Chief Minister's Comprehensive Health Insurance Scheme. I'd like to invite Mr. Angrup Sonam, General Manager, to the stage.
Thank you, Samir Kochar sir. Thank you, Scotch. Before I request my GM Health to speak on this award which you got today, I must say before the audience that United India Insurance Company is a fully government-owned company with total sovereign guarantee with 85 years of rich legacy. And this Scotch Award is the 5th in a row for the year. Earlier, through Banking Frontiers, we got Best Digital Initialization, and then through Innovative Award for Best Third-Party Claims Services. Now recently from SOGM, Kolkata, for the Best Claim Settlers Award for United India Insurance Company. And now this is icing on the cake, the best award which we ever got for the second time, Scotch Award. Thank you very much, sir.
Congratulations.
So good morning all. We are once again thanking the SKOCH Group for this prestigious award in our 85th year of existence. The project that we have got is for Tamil Nadu integrated scheme, Chief Minister's scheme with Ayushman Bharat, where we are covering almost 4 crore of population, 1.4 crore of families, and we are doing it 12th year in a row. We are paying out over 10 lakhs claims every year, which is more than 1,300 crores. And we are always glad that we are there for that BPL, below poverty line families in their times of need. So thank you so much for recognizing us, and let's hope we together continue.
The next SKOCH Award for Loan Management System, Silver, to Saturn Credit Care Network Limited. I'd like to invite Mr. Ashok Rawat, General Manager, to the stage.
So I just want to thank SKOCH Group for recognizing our work, and especially our customers whom we are serving. Thank you very much.
The next SKOCH Award, Silver, to HDFC Life Insurance for transformation of group insurance underwriting. I'd like to invite Mr. Sanjay Tiwari, Executive Vice President, to the stage.
On behalf of HDFC Life, we are one of the largest life insurance company in this country, the SKOCH Group, Mr. Kochar, and we continue to expand insurance in the vision of our government to offer insurance at affordable and accessible ways. Thank you very much.
The next SKOCH Award, Gold, to Telangana Grameen Bank for Nari Shakti. I'd like to invite Ms. Shobha onto the stage.
Thank you very much, sir, SKOCH Awards Group, that they have selected us for this award. Doing good things on the ground is one thing, but getting recognized on a national platform like this is definitely a very creditable thing. We take the honor today and thank the jury for selecting us and awarding us this today. Thank you.
The next SKOCH Award, Financial Reporting, Gold, to State Bank of India. I'd like to invite Mr. Kalpesh Avashia, Chief General Manager, to the stage. The next SKOCH Award, Gold, Union Bank of India for Union Prerna. I'd like to invite Mr. Lal Singh, Chief General Manager, to the stage.
Good morning to everyone. Thanks to jury and the SKOCH Group for recognizing the efforts of Union Bank of India through Union Prerna. I thank on behalf of entire 76,000 plus Unionites and on behalf of 170 million customers of Union Bank of India. Thank you.
That marks the end of the SKOCH Awards for Banking and Financial Services. I'd like to thank Dr. Dhanjal. I'd also like to thank all the awardees for their presence. And now, I would like to invite Mr. Kocher to deliver the opening remarks for the curtain raiser of the India Economic Forum. Can we please have a huge round of applause?
Namaskar. I am possibly the only non-economist in the world who organizes an economic forum. I have no formal education to back me up on what I say, what I do, what I write, what I recommend. But I do have a huge learning from my own life and my experience from coming from poverty to where I am today to depend on to be able to bring what I say, felt needs, to the policy table. It is only the poor who can understand the enormous burden of poverty. And in today's day and age, when we are having such vibrant discussions on things like freebies and what should be given to the poor, what should not be given, I have opinions that are based only on my own experience. I used to live in Paharganj. My mother was the only one who could, keep track of money. We had very little of it. And if she had 50 rupees, there were challenging decisions to be made. I mean, whether you would use that 50 rupees to pay an overdue Bijli ka bill, electricity bill, which was long overdue. Would you pay that 50 rupees for my overdue school fee? Or would you pay that 50 rupees to a doctor's visit because she had a splitting headache for many, many years? Now, my mother being what she was, her priority was my education, and she put that money into my school. The next day, the people from Delhi electricity supply came to disconnect our meter. She cried in front of them with a folded hand saying that, we will pay soon enough, and somehow persuaded them to keep the electricity running. So when I hear things like merit goods and non-merit goods and merit subsidies and non-merit subsidies, I often wonder who is to decide. Is free electricity bad? Is free water bad? Water again, in that same house in Paharganj, we were on the second floor, there was little or no water supply. And in this heat of May and June of Delhi, my mom used to go down 2 floors and to a public hand pump and bring up 40 buckets of water. 40 buckets for a family of 4. only a thirsty person knows the value of drinking water. So is the free water bad? I think these are things to ponder. And when my economist friends tell me that freebies are bad and we should not give, I say, yeah, freebies generally are bad, but they have to be better targeted. It's freebies for who? Is it free electricity for all? Is it free water for all? Or is it for some? And that is where the whole complexity of governance systems and reaching and targeting comes into play. My entire life has been devoted to inclusive growth of India. I wanted to see an India where there was no poverty, nobody like me. And I think the Honorable Prime Minister has given us a vision by 2047 that is going to be the case. India is going to be Viksit Bharat. I think he's addressing the Governing Council of Niti Aayog on the same subject. And he's been doing this Man Ki Baat ever since he became Prime Minister. We have been able to make our own little attempt for 30 years now, where we have been collecting these little Man Ki Baats. छोटी छोटी विकास की कहानी सहेज के ही एक विकसित भारत बनता है. So if you look at national platforms or you look at these glitzy awards that media and publications give, you don't find Grameen banks, you don't find SHGs, you don't find Panchayati Raj institutions, you find nobody. But it is the little successes of the little people who are going to make a giant nation. And that is what makes Scotch different. All of you need to be celebrated and applauded. In your own little way, you have helped India become a developed country in 2047 time frame. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Mr. Kocher. And now for the Scotch India Economic Forum Awards, I would like to invite Dr. Bibek Debroy to the stage, Chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. First award in the Scotch India Economic Forum under the category Reforms goes to Mr. Ravinder Singh Dhillon, Chairman and Managing Director, Power Finance Corporation. Mr. Dhillon has steered the Power Finance Corporation to attain the status of Maharatna from Navratna earlier. It was due to his efforts leading to liquidity infusion to DISCOMs during COVID that maintained the power sector value chain, averting the crisis.
Good morning, everyone. It is a privilege to get this award, and I am thankful to SKOCH Group for this award. I would like to thank the entire team at PFC who has supported me. PFC is the largest NBFC in the country and is a Maharatna also. And it has financed power sector in a big way. We have funded more than 230 gigawatts of installed capacity, and PFC is funding generation, transmission, distribution. And now it has started funding for the last 6-7 years renewable energy also in a big way. And we are contributing to the energy transition in the country. We have funded around 225,000 megawatts of renewable energy. So we are doing our bit for the environment and to support the net zero target to be achieved by 2070. And PFC has been getting awards for Golden Shield from the Institute also for financial reporting. So thank you very much, Sameer ji. Thank you.
Competitiveness goes to Mr. Amit Kapoor, Institute for Competitiveness. Mr. Amit Kapoor's contribution in setting up the Institute for Competitiveness has led to pioneering competitiveness, benchmarking, measurement, and index efforts in India. His works, like the Ease of Living Index, Innovation Index, and Export Performance Index, have shaped the policy discussions in the government and the private sector.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Scotch. In fact, it's absolutely a pleasure to receive this award, but I must mention that if there is one person I would like to emulate in life, he's standing extremely on the left of my side. That is Dr. DeBroy. So it's an honor to receive it from him. But I would also like to thank three very interesting people who have been friend, philosopher, and guides for me. That is Richard Dasher from Stanford, Michael Porter, and Christian from Harvard, with whom I've actually worked on the area of competitiveness. And of course, my wife and my teachers in the past. That is Dr. Balaji, Dr. Vaidya, Dr. Preetham Singh. And of course, as I would also like to thank one more person, that is Amitabh Kant, who's believed in a lot of my work. But thanks the most to Dr. DeBroy for really believing in my work and supporting me. Thank you.
I hope I can inspire you to become my size. I was that size, now this size.
So I think collectively the weight of this room is actually pivoted towards us. That is what it is.
Our next award for monetary policy goes to Professor Lekha Chakraborty. Professor Chakraborty will be joining us virtually.
Hello?
Yes, hi. Congratulations, Lekha. We're conferring this award on you.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something? Can you see us? No. Anyway, go ahead. So Dr. Bibek Devroy has conferred this award on you, and would you like to say something?
Thank you so much. It's my privilege and honor, and I feel so happy to share the platform virtually with my mentor, Professor Gopi Rao, and of course Dr. Sandeep Sinha and other industry friends. And Vivek, it's my privilege, and Samirji, it's just the beginning. We just incorporate the human development concerns in the country economic policy. Now it's looked so normally. We talked about North and the Ministry of Finance, the way they integrated the gentlemen. But months ago, we have to get it done. I dream of central bank governor talking about integrating the gentlemen, and also the future finance commission talking about it. And being macroeconomists, they're always busy talking about dating the business cycles. But we need to take the fiscal policy and monetary policy from the status of countercyclical policy tools and start incorporate human development concerns. And this award is an inspiration to young scholars who believe in me and my work. And thank you so much once again, Samirji, for this recognition. And I consider this recognition just as beginning to contribute more to our country. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Rekha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Our next award under monetary policy goes to Professor Charan Singh, CEO and founding director, EGROW Foundation, and non-executive chairman, Punjab and Sindh Bank. Professor Charan Singh has offered novel methods for using monetary policy to promote economic recovery and expansion. He has worked extensively on debt management and argues that with growing complexities in monetary management and rising debt, both functions for sake of transparency and better policy focus should be separated. His research on financial inclusion aims to enhance female labor participation in India.
Thank you very much for conferring this award to me and recognizing my work, both to you, Samir, and Professor DeBroy. I think this is very timely I've been talking about inflation targeting core of monetary policy and thinking about demographic along with this. Not been done anywhere in the world. I've also been saying that India is a country which minted multiple indicator approach. And the last episode that you see of aggressive interest rate rises based on high inflation in America and other advanced countries clearly show probably research on inflation and monetary policy is still inadequate. This award should recognize that India has economists which can contribute significantly and seek revisit of the Cambridge equation, which is the pivot of monetary policy. Thank you very much.
Our next award under economic policy goes to Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. Apart from being a leading economist and a financial markets expert, Mr. Sanyal is also an environmentalist promoting sustainable development and an urban tourist. He has been one of the main architects of G20's Global Action Plan, which was used to coordinate the international response to COVID-19. He is also an ardent votary of enforcement of contracts and modernizing the banking sector.
So let me say that I'm indeed honored to even be considered for this prestigious award. Let me say that it is a special honor to be getting it from Vivek Da, who is not merely a colleague, but someone I consider a mentor and guru. Let me accept it then on behalf of our very young team of young professionals and young consultants who work in our team. And let me say that the next generation of policymakers are on the way. And let me assure you that they are excellent, Sameerji. Many of them will be here on this stage in a few years' time. So let me accept it on their behalf, and also of the perennially beleaguered community of policymakers. As you all know, every Indian has very strong opinions on economic policies. Nobody remembers it when you get it right, but if you ever get it wrong, nobody forgets it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we hope to see you. You are quite young, here for at least another 30 years.
And now finally, for the SKOCH India Economic Lifetime Achievement Award. The award goes to Dr. M. Govinda Rao, Councillor, Takshashila Institution and former member of the 14th Finance Commission. India's policy discourse has immensely benefited from Govinda Rao's contributions in public finance and fiscal policy, and in particular, in the areas of fiscal decentralization and federalism. He was persuasive in ensuring that the 14th Finance Commission incorporated the planned requirements of the states, which resulted in the 10 percentage point increase in tax devolution. I'd like to invite Dr. Rao for his acceptance speech.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Samir Kocherji, my dear good friend Vivek Devroy, members of the SKOCH family, distinguished invitees, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to express my heartfelt thanks for honoring me with this Lifetime Achievement Award this year. To me, this has come as a great surprise. Just as it must have come as a surprise for many of you. That's because I have always kept a low profile. And I never came from or have been a part of a high street, nor advertised myself in my works. Except for those with whom I had close interactions, not much is known of me. It must have taken a lot of effort to identify me too, and for the honor, I am grateful for those recommended. I believe Vivek was one of those who recommended me for this honor. To be sure, it has been a long and arduous voyage. Samir talked about his background, but he was at least in an urban area. If you have to come from a rural area, it's an entirely different thing to do. So he talked about electricity bill. We didn't have to pay because there was no electricity. He talked about the water supply bill, the water supply difficulties. We didn't have proper water supply anyway, but then since it's a village, any water is fine. To be sure, it has been a long and arduous voyage, and often enough, I have completed 75 years, of which 50 years have been spent in research in economics. I came from a remote village in a coastal part of Karnataka with no roads or electricity. There was no clock in the house. And we had to guess the time for going to the school by looking at the position of the sun and length of the shallows. And often it used to rain a lot, and then it was just a random thing that you think that this is the time, and then you go to the school. My parents had no formal schooling, and my brother, who was the first matriculate in the family, had left the house for his higher studies to a far-off place a year before I was born. I used to see him only during summer vacations. And in many ways, he was my role model. I used to see him only, in fact, he was the one who eventually pioneered the satellite technology for this country by designing and producing Aryabhata, the first Indian satellite, and built an advanced space research in the country as the chairman of the Space Commission. There was no expectation from my parents, as far as education is concerned. They said, since the boy is passing, let him go to the school. When I completed my BA, I had to ask my brother to finance my higher studies. And he asked me to go over to Ahmedabad, where he was working in the physical research laboratory. The problem with the university was that even English language was taught in Gujarati there. So I had to learn my economics in Gujarati, which I didn't know. I am eternally grateful to all my teachers and colleagues with whom I learned a lot in my research career. Very interestingly, I started my research with Professor Lakdawala, who had taken over as the director of Sardar Patel Institute of Economic Research in Ahmedabad, and immediately after my MA, in fact, he invited me to join him. Later, I worked with a gentleman called Shiv Shankar Prasad Gupta, who had just returned from UK, from University of Leeds, and he was a student of Peacock and Wiseman, and possibly one of the best public finance experts. And he was in Sardar Patel Institute, but there were some problems, so he left over to Sambalpur University. And he persuaded me to go, and I was naive. After all, I was not one of those smart urban kids. So I decided to go to Sambalpur, only to realize that there was no research, either the research atmosphere, or research culture, or research infrastructure. So obviously I had to move all over the country to do my PhD. He persuaded me to join him, and I joined him, but it's only later, way back in 1977, when Dr. Chellaya started the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, he happened to see a couple of my articles and found out where I was and asked me to join the Sardar Patel Institute. I joined the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. I mean, in fact, it was housed in Rajendra Place, in one of those rented places. And it's from there I grew with the institute. I grew with NIPAP, and Dr. Chelaya was in that sense, he was my mentor, particularly on tax policy and reforms. Not that I agreed with many of the things that he said, and we used to always have constant arguments, but then he put up with me. Later I had the benefit of close associations with Richard Byrd, who was my real guide and critic. Wallace Oates at the University of Maryland, where I was a Ford Foundation fellow, a postdoctoral fellow, with whom I learned a great deal on fiscal federalism, because he was, in all the senses, he is the father of fiscal federalism literature. And Albert Breton, who was a great public choice theorist, and then I had a great friendship and a lot of interactions with him. In fact, he visited the NIPAP for a month. He visited the Institute for Social and Economic Change for a month at my invitation to interact with the faculty there. At NIPAP, I had great colleagues, notably Arindam Dasgupta, who was a critic and a sounding board. And he would call a spade, and that's a great quality. And of course, we had Amresh Bagchi, whose counsel was great on practical issues of tax policy. If there is anything of note I have done, it's all due to them. I would like to narrate two incidents where I did dabble in policy, which had a direct bearing on policy, besides being a backroom boy. In fact, most of the time we are backroom boys. The first was in 1993, way back, when I wrote a paper on taxation of services in the Asia-Pacific region for the Asian Development Bank Conference. My colleague Arindam Dasgupta, as usual, told me that the best place for the paper was the nearest trash can. But then I wanted a second opinion and sent it to Dr. Chelaya, who by then, after finishing the Tax Reform Committee 2 reports, was actually in the Finance Ministry implementing them at the invitation of Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was the Finance Minister. So I sent it to him, and then Dr. Chelaya always used to read whatever I wrote. And the next day he said, "You come over." So I went to him, and he said, "Govind, this is a very good paper." Now this is a good contrast to what. And he said, "But then I want you to do one thing. I want you to write a note. Want you to write a note for me on taxation of services in India." Now, and then he said, "I will give you 10,000 rupees for doing that." And I said, "You keep your 10,000 rupees. I will write the note, but then give me time." He said, "All right. If you don't want the money, you give it to the institute." After a week, he calls me and said that, "Where is the note?" And I said, I was bargaining for time. Now I lost money as well as time. So he actually put one Mr. Gautam Ray to work with me. And in a few days' time, we prepared a note on taxation of services. And we suggested that, in the 7th schedule to the Constitution, taxation of services is neither in central list nor in the state list. Now, so we basically, we made a recommendation that the India could start a taxation of services, invoking Article 248 of the Constitution, which says that if it is neither in none of the lists, it goes to the center. And we suggested to begin with the 3 services, which are non-life insurance, stock brokerage, and telecom. Lo and behold, I didn't know that this was that important. for the first time in the taxation of services, the service taxation was levied in the 1994 budget based on this note. The second incident that comes to my mind was much later. I was made a chairman of the task force on taxation of services, chairman of the expert committee on taxation of services. And that was this committee which actually said tax all services, give tax credit to goods against services, services against goods. At the central level, reduce the number of tax rates in excise duty. And then when you give this tax credit to goods and services, it becomes a goods and services tax at the center. This is the first committee that actually made that recommendation. And I was asked to make a presentation to the task force on indirect taxes chaired by Kelkar. And Kelkar basically took, and then of course the second recommendation was give concurrent powers of taxation to states and work out the place of supply rules. At the same time, take away the tax, interstate sales tax or the central sales tax, so that the state can convert their value added, they were talking about value added tax, that becomes a goods and services tax. So this is the second recommendation that was made, and this was presented to Dr. Kelkar, and Dr. Kelkar in his indirect tax report put the same recommendation, and he became the father of goods and services taxation. It doesn't matter who did it, but the point is that this particular thing came first from the expert group on taxation services. So I had the challenge and opportunity of reviving and advancing research in two institutions. In fact, somebody was yesterday mentioning that both the institutions when I took over were in a very bad shape. Things improved. And I left, and both the institutions got into bad shape. I mean, of course, it was revised again. And at least I had the satisfaction of creating some, in fact, for 14 years, 4 years in Institute for Social and Economic Change in Bangalore, and 10 years in National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. So this gave me it gave me an opportunity to work on a variety of themes with a number of younger colleagues. And I am grateful to them for putting up with me, in fact, putting with my often very unreasonable demands. At NIPIP, I initiated a refresher course training for university teachers in public finance, and during summer vacation, and that became a very, very popular course, and then a large number of university teachers attended them over a period of 8 years. But then this was stopped once my successor took over because he didn't have the time. But of course, I understand that now it is being revived, and I hope at least that will be a connection they will continue with the universities. Well, I have spoken long enough, and I do not wish to continue. But I wish to continue doing my research and writing. And let me once again thank Mr. Co-Chair, Dr. Debroy, SKOCH family for honoring me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. I would now like to invite Dr. Debroy for the keynote for the India Economic Forum.
Thank you, SKOCH and Samir Kocher, for having shown me the honor of inviting me here to present these awards to people I know extremely well. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you know from the newspapers, There's a lot of stuff going on in Delhi right now, this particular weekend. Some stuff that harks back to 1947, some stuff that looks forward to 2047. And I needed to disappear for 1 hour to come and be here. So someone asked me, where are you going? How can you afford to vanish? That also on a rainy Saturday morning. So I said, no, I have to go. My dear friend Govinda Rao is getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. So he said, and Govind himself said he maintains a low profile, so he said, oh, the actor. I said, no. I don't have actors as friends. It is the economist. So he said, wait a minute, isn't Govind Rao too young to be getting a Lifetime Achievement Award? I said, yes, that's true. But there have been economists, not all, but there have been some economists who have done a considerable amount of good work after getting Lifetime Achievement Awards. And I'm particularly mentioning Govind. Govind is a few years older to me. But I'm particularly mentioning Govind because Govind and I, in some sense, belong to a slightly different generation. Compared to Amit Kapoor, Sanjeev Sanyal, Charan Singh, well, Charan pretends to belong to the other generation, and Lekha Chakrabarti, who will go on to do many other things and win many other awards. Govind said he grew up in a house which had no electricity, ditto for me. He grew up in a house which had no tap water, ditto for me. That was a generation immediately after independence. It was a generation which grew up with shortages. It was a generation which grew up with deprivation. It was a generation which grew up with a chip on its shoulder every time it went out into the outside world and had to defend India. It was a generation where the image of India elsewhere in the world was about yoga and cuisine. At the stroke of the midnight hour when the world sleeps, India awakes. It may have been a masterly piece of oratory, but strictly speaking, it was wrong, in the sense that at the stroke of the midnight hour, the rest of the world was not sleeping. The rest of the world was chugging along, moving along. When Govind and I were students, we used to be taught, at least I was taught, I'm sure so was he. We used to be taught that there were 3 categories of countries in the world. Those terms are not quite used now. There were 3 categories of countries in the world: the developed countries, the developing countries, and the LDCs, the least developed countries. As we began to grow up, we realized that there was another category, and that set consisted of only one single country, and that single country was India, and that set's, the acronym for that set was not RDC, but was not LDC, but RDC. And RDC stood for refusing to develop country. 2047 and 1947. 2047 is rather an interesting number for those of you who are interested in numbers. other than the obvious multiples of 1 and 2047, it has two other multiples, both of which are prime numbers, 23 and 89. I think that's interesting because in some ways, India is reflecting and carrying forward the legacy that's almost 89 years old, and in this book, which by the way is closely guarded, I'm told only some privileged people have copies of this book. I'm told it's being going to be open to the public, available to the public only when the new parliament building is inaugurated. Anyway, there's a book which says India 2047, which has a paper, I'm told, by Dr. Rangarajan, who is now 91. So that 23 and 89, it is a useful metaphor, particularly because the SKOCH Group is also sometimes, it makes its presence felt through Rohan Kochar, who's older again than 23, but pretends to be 23. But anyway, so looking forward to 2047. It's an aspirational goal. No one actually knows what India will be like in 2047. Some of us have written papers. Despite life expectancy having increased, at least Govind and I will not be alive in 2047. So no one will criticize us for saying you were wrong. Not necessarily true for the others. Yes, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. As I said, it's an aspirational India. Whatever kind of prognosis you have about real growth rates, there is no denying that the size of the economy, and size does matter, is going to be fairly large. US, China, and India. The relative size, I'm not talking about per capita income, I'm talking about the total size. It depends on whether you're doing purchasing power parity or official exchange rates, but there's no denying the size will be considerable. If you look at the work of Angus Maddison, the historical work of Angus Maddison and his colleagues, and you track back to India in the past, that particular India was not geographically the same as India today. Nonetheless, what distinguished India from the rest of the world was not purely the differential in per capita income, which was not much, but the differential in the size. So the size of the economy, the economic clout it brings, the political clout it brings, the strategic clout it brings, we can already see it being manifest. It will become even more so. In terms of that aspiration, a lot depends on what we do and what we don't do. A list of reforms. Every economist will churn out a wish list of reforms. Some on the union list, some on the state list, and some actually on the local body list, although not much has been done in terms of decentralization and devolution to the local bodies. Much of it is about factor market reforms. Much of it is about efficiency. Will those reforms happen? No, all of those will not happen. If you think in terms of ticking boxes, and I said number theory is pretty useful, 2047 you convert it into binary, you will have a series of ones. Will we tick all of those ones? No, we won't. Because it's a complete myth to say that all reforms are win-win. Reforms mean unbalanced people win, but some people lose. So all of those will not happen. But nonetheless, no matter how low your forecasts are, no matter how low your predictions are, there is no denying that 2047 will have an India that will be a remarkably different India. That will be an India in which the likes of Rohan Kochar will stand here and give awards on completely different subjects that we cannot even think of today. Let me congratulate everyone who has been awarded. Thank you very much.
Can we do a quick group photo of the economic awardees with it?
I'd like to invite all the panelists on stage and all the awards, the economic awards. And now it is time for the launch of India 2047, High Income with Equity. We already have Dr. Govinda Rao on stage. I would like to invite all the panelists, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, Professor Charan Singh, Mr. Amit Kapoor, and Dr. Sanjay Baru. I would also like to invite Mr. Vikesh Dhyani, co-founder, Oak Ridge Publishing, to introduce the book India 2047, High Income with Equity.
A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of Oak Ridge Publishing, it brings me great pleasure to talk about our latest publication, India 2047, High Income with Equity, a book that captures the idea of a better future for our nation, edited under the guidance of Mr. Samir Kochar and enriched with invaluable contributions from stalwart economists, administrators, policymakers, and thought leaders. India, a country known for its rich culture, history, diversity, peace, harmony, and resilience, has always been a land of dreams and aspirations. Our forefathers fought for its independence, and we strive to build a nation that is inclusive, progressive, and prosperous. And we strive, over the years, we have witnessed incredible transformations, overcoming challenges and embracing change with a steadfast determination. The Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his 76th Independence Day address, set an ambitious target for India to become a developed nation by 2047. In fact, today, as we go about releasing this book, the Honorable PM is chairing 8th Governing Council meeting of Niti Aayog on the theme of Vikasit Bharat, or developed India to deliberate on issues related to health, skill development, women empowerment, and infrastructure development with an aim to make India a developed nation by 2047. In the year 2047, we envision India as an empowered nation where economic growth is not limited to a select few only. Our goal is to create a society where every individual, regardless of their background or circumstances, has the opportunity to not just survive, but to thrive. As publishers of authoritative and scholarly works, we understand the power of books to inspire, educate, and transform lives. India 2047 is not just a book, it is an embodiment of our aspirations, a roadmap to guide us towards a future that transcends the boundaries of imagination. It explores the possibilities that lie ahead and ignites the flames of hope within our hearts. Through its carefully crafted pages, it unravels the tapestry of progress, innovation, and inclusivity that will shape India's destiny. It reminds us of the immense potential that lies within each one of us and the collective strength we possess as a nation. The book emphasizes the strengths of the Indian economy and good governance. The authors of the book have meticulously researched and analyzed the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Their collective insights provide a comprehensive and holistic view of India's journey towards 2047. The book is divided into 8 sections, focusing on important topics like macroeconomic fundamentals, financial and social inclusion, and equitable growth, federalism and inclusive growth, infrastructure and financing, digital financial inclusion, and spatially dispersed and job-generating growth in order to achieve high income and equity. As publishers, we have the honor of working with authors, intellectuals, and visionaries who have devoted their hearts and minds to the writings of this thought-provoking book. We are honored to be the means through which their message is delivered to you, since we have personally witnessed their commitment, diligence, and unshakable faith in India's future. I want to extend our sincere gratitude to the authors whose knowledge and commitment have made this book possible. I would also like to express our sincere appreciation for the group of researchers, editors, and designers who put in countless hours to make sure the presentation and content are of greatest caliber. A special thanks to Mr. Samir Kochar, Chairman, SKOCH Group, and his enterprising team for helping drive this ambitious book project. I have no doubt that reading its pages will spark your creativity, arouse your passion, and inspire you to actively contribute to the process of nation building. I encourage you to read through its chapters, consider its arguments, and let it motivate you to act. Finally, I thank you all for gracing this book launch with your august presence. I invite you to join us in celebrating the power of ideas and limitless potential of India. Together, let us embrace the journey of hope and progress that India 2047 represents. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikesh. It's time to unveil the book that has already been talked about, and I invite Mr. Kochar, who has put this volume together, to kindly join us on stage. I request Professor Rao to, all the panelists kindly come in front of the stage. We have some of the authors who have contributed to the book. I would like to invite them to join us on stage. We have Dr. Amarjit Sinha, former Union Secretary with us, Mr. Siraj Hussain, former Union Secretary, Professor Rama Baru from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Mr. T. Koshi. Kindly join us on stage for unveiling of the book, and of course our publisher, Vikesh. Vikesh. I request Dr. Govinda Rao to kindly unveil the book. Well, thank you so much for doing the honors, Dr. Rao. With this, I hand over the mic to you to kindly chair this panel and take the proceedings further.
Mr. Co-Chair, distinguished invitees and members of the media. We should compliment Mr. Samir Co-Chair for putting together this forward-looking volume in this Amrit Kal and thinking about the challenges and opportunities to see India join the Committee of Developed Nations. The book is aspirational and will provide scholars to think and debate about the future and the policymakers a clear policy path to meet various challenges. India in 2047 would have 1.64 trillion people, over 60% of towns and cities, and has 60% of people living in towns and cities. The median age is expected to be 38. An overwhelming proportion of the population will be in the age group of 15 to 65, which will be the working age group. And providing them productive employment holds the key to prosperity. As I mentioned, this is an aspirational book for seeing the country as a developed nation with sustainability and equity. It has 22 articles contributed by preeminent scholars on various aspects, listing developmental challenges, and a second summary by Samir. We have there are two people I believe are not coming. There are 4 eminent speakers to debate on the book today, and I do not want to rob their time. We have 1 hour for this session, which implies that each speaker can speak for about 15 minutes. Even if we exceed a little, it doesn't matter, because we are talking about India in its centennial year. So what it would look like, what would be the status of the people, what sort of respect India will have in the Committee of Nations, what sort of challenges and opportunities that exist to reach there. And obviously, there are some people who are already saying that there are no poor in this country, but then we have to see that even in relative terms, there is not much of a poverty there. Without further ado, I call upon the first speaker, Mr. Amit Kapoor, Honorary Chairman of Institute of Competitiveness.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. This is a very fascinating subject on which we are really trying to talk in terms of understanding what India would like to be in 2047. So if you really look at India in the present context, there's something very interesting that is happening. Like we are one of the breakout nations, if you really look at it. This is a country which has been driving growth across the world. We actually do something called the momentum index, and if you really look at the momentum, if there are 3 countries which are going to drive momentum across the world, then India pegs at number 1 right now. So the world economy is going to get driven through India, through the changes that we are actually seeing within the country. And if you really look at the larger set of data that is available, the larger set of data actually just shows very, very clearly that you are in the block of countries like, say, China, US, if you really look at the aggregated European Union. But now the question is going to be what India needs to do further if we actually have to achieve the status of being a developed country by 2047. A lot of things need to be done. Of course, like everything's not hunky-dory. In fact, a lot of people will criticize in terms of saying that everything's wrong with the country. There would be other set of people who would say that everything's right with the country. I think for a country to be a developed nation, it's a journey that we are embarking on. We have the right antecedents today to really be what India aspires to be. If you really look at from the larger competitiveness viewpoint, the factor conditions are absolutely set, the land, labor, capital, etc. But predominantly, if you really look at the resources, India is a resource-rich location. But the second thing is going to be about the demography. We do talk about demography, but the fundamental question is going to be that the demographic dividend that we have is available until about 2055. But what needs to be done to really exploit this demographic dividend? There are two things which I fundamentally believe that need to be done. The government of India is already doing some of it, but it has to be hastened as a process. The two things are fundamentally, like one is, of course, education. And when I say education, not only about higher education, it is about foundational learning. Today, when you talk about COVID years has exposed a lot of things across the world in terms of how the learning losses have happened over a period of time. So we need to look at foundational learning and literacy as one of the paradigms for the future. We have the new education policy, which is really the stack on which everything needs to be built up, but we will have to really go across the states to understand what needs to be done further for really making that a successful endeavor. If you really look at the states as well, India's competitiveness, we cannot look at India as just one single entity. We will have to fundamentally understand that India is about a federal structure. There are 29 different realities that exist. The question here today is that if you look at the Indian context, there are 6 to 8 states which drive a lot of economic growth. You have the states of Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, which are driving the growth. But we have the certain set of laggards in terms of saying the states of UP, which is doing a lot of things, but if you talk about Maharashtra, you talk about Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, these are the states which will have to fundamentally revive themselves. In fact, there is a whole lot of disparity that exists within the country that is there. And what is that disparity? Let me give you some figures here. The top district in the country in terms of exports close to about 10% of India's exports. That is the Jamnagar factory, or that single location is close to about 9.83% of India's exports. But if you remove that, even then what you would find is that there are just about 100 districts in the country which contribute close to about 90% of India's exports. So that means we have to really see how we really push economic development across different sets of regions. In fact, if you talk about the GDP contribution itself, the GDP contribution is predominantly coming from about 100 districts within the country. The larger thing, if you really dig deeper in terms of understanding this phenomena, I think Samir did mention something very interesting, and that was about cities. If you really look at the state of Maharashtra, close to about 90% of Maharashtra's GDP is coming from 10 locations. So what we are really saying is that we have centers of excellence. The larger question for the country is going to be that how do we take it to a smaller level of geography? How do we really make sure that the locations beyond the existing set of locations actually go there? In fact, when you talk about development as well, the larger question is not about just the per capita incomes. The larger question is going to be, as a developed country, what is it that we would be looking like? It has to be driven by two aspects. One is very, very clearly the ease of doing business that the government does talk about. And the second thing, what the Prime Minister has been alluding to, and he makes very profound statements on that and very deep. And the government is trying to do it, but more will need to be done. And that is what you would call as ease of living or social progress. So India as a developed country will have to achieve social progress indicators which are far different from what we are actually talking about. When you talk about educational outcomes, they will have to be different. When you talk about health outcomes, they will have to be different. When you talk about nutritional outcomes, they will have to be a fair shade different in terms of what we are really seeing right now. If you really ask me, like one thing that I would like to see in India as a developed country in 2047 is that the social metrics should possibly be closer to what the Scandinavian countries are able to do. And if we are able to achieve it, we would have achieved, or we would have actually done a lot of favor to our people. In fact, it's our duty, our fundamental duty to really do that. We would have actually made a difference to the world. In fact, there is also one more thing, like the world, for India, for the world to succeed, India needs to succeed. It cannot be just, we are just trying to really say something on the top of our heads or whatever. For India needs to be successful. Its people need to be successful. The next thing that we have to really look at is disparity. We have grown extensively, but there is one thing, one elephant in the room that we really don't talk about. and that is the disparity that actually exists. We have to fundamentally take care of disparity. Couple of points. It is not only about income disparity that we are really talking about. It is about disparity in terms of, say, women labor force participation. According to the PLFS data, we clearly know that only 27% of women are actually participating in the workforce. So what we need to do here is that we need to increase that aspect. The moment we are able to have larger number of women in the workforce, we are simply talking about higher productivity numbers, higher growth rates, and so on and so forth. But if you really look at it, there have been various pastures or various punctuation points in terms of how India has actually grown. There was this pre-1991 era, and I would always say 1991 to 2014 era, and then 2014 onwards. There has been a huge shift in what India has actually done post-2014. I am absolutely a firm believer that the government actually did focus on two ideas, ease of doing business and quality of life, but more will have to be done over a period of time. But what more needs to be done? What are those principles that we will have to carry forward? There are 4 principles I fundamentally believe will have to be carried forward if we want to take care of this. And there are 4 S's as we would look at it. In fact, I recently did publish the competitiveness roadmap for the country. In fact, Sanjeev was present when we had actually released that. But there are 4 principles or 4 S's that we need to look at. And those 4 S's would be that we need to talk about shared prosperity. We need to talk about social progress. We need to talk about solid, or what you would call as resilient growth. India has shown extreme levels of resilience during COVID, but we need to do more about it because COVID is once in a lifetime kind of a thing. But you might say that the last pandemic happened in 1918, now it is 2018, but we might actually see far greater pandemics to be really taken care of. The most important thing is going to be about our issues with climate change. The surface temperatures in India are going to rise by anything between 5 to 7 degrees centigrade. If those temperatures are rising at about 5 to 7 degrees centigrade, that means we will have to fundamentally alter the way we think about economics. We are doing it, but far more needs to be done for India to achieve in what we are really looking at in 2047. When you talk about renewable energy, that's a great step, but we will have to make lifestyle changes ourselves as a community for us. In fact, one of the biggest changes that I would like to see in India by 2047 is that we should start asking a question to ourselves as to what is the contribution that I'm making as a person or as a citizen rather than what the government is doing. Each one of us in this room should be known by the contribution we make than anything else. In fact, and then of course, there are 4 other things which I feel will have to be done and taken care of. And if we really expand that 4S principle, and those 4 things would be, one is sector and location specific strategies. What is it that we need to do in each of the states? We have to do away with our obsession of doing everything under the sun in every state. Each state has its own strength. When you talk about, say, Maharashtra or Gujarat, Gujarat has strengths in manufacturing. It should be the manufacturing hub. If there is some strength in Orissa, it should be focusing on that. But what I do see is that every state wants to do everything under the sun. We need to change that. And I think there are steps being taken for it. Every state will not be an export hub. Every state will not be an IT hub. Every state will not be a manufacturing hub. But there would actually be something very unique to what they are. So we need to focus on that. One of the other things, one sector or location specific things would be that we need to give more independence to our cities. We need to make sure that cities are actually driving growth. Across the world, if you really look at it, it's the cities which drive growth. When you talk about New York, you talk about San Francisco, Bay Area, etc. In India also cities drive growth, but cities will need to create their own visions. I think cities will have to be given far more power by the chief ministers. We have seen power get devolved to the states by the center. But then the question is going to be how power gets devolved by the chief ministers to various sets of people is going to be exceedingly important. The second thing is going to be about enabling social policies. What are those enabling social policies? How do we really make sure that all the social progress aspects are really moving forward? Strengthening effective markets. There are certain anti-competitive market distortions that exist. How do we really strengthen those markets? Like how our process towards production-linked incentive schemes are very, very huge, but we will have to further align ourselves to the global value chains and really move forward. Last but not the least is going to be about competitive firms. If India needs to actually be a developed nation, we will have to see a resilient, competitive, sector or the private sector. Jobs are always going to get created by enterprises. We have to do away with that idea that businesses can be thieves. Businesses are people who contribute to the growth of a nation. If businesses don't thrive, nations don't thrive. Entrepreneurship is one of the biggest things that is happening in India, but we need to push it further and really move forward with those set of things. So if you really look at it, to sum it all, we have to focus on 4S, which is very clearly shared, social, solid, and sustainable. We need to focus on 4 principles of sector and location-specific policies, enabling social policies, then of course effective markets and competitive firms. But I do feel that India would actually be a nation which will be close to about $20,000 per capita. Very simple mathematics, if you really look at it. If India continues to grow at about 8 to 9%, we will achieve something which is phenomenal, a growth story that nobody has ever seen in the past. It would actually make quality of life of people, which is absolutely stunning. So I have huge hope for ourselves. Even at the most pathetic growth rates, if we might say, India will still be very close to achieving a high-income country. But I aspire to something which is far bigger and better for ourselves and for our nation and for our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kapoor, for those well thought out sort of aspirational analysis of how it will look like in 2047. Now, may I call upon Dr. Sanjeev Sanyal to give his take on the book.
So here we are in 2023, looking ahead at 2047, 25 years from now, and thinking about how we can become, as this book says, high income with equity. Now, as you all know, we are already, in US dollar terms, the world's 5th largest economy, in PPP terms, the world's 3rd largest economy. By most reckoning, before the end of this decade, we will be the world's 3rd largest economy, even in US dollar terms. But of course, we will still be a very poor economy in per capita terms. We have a large population, so once you divide this, even a large economy, we end up with very low per capita income. So when we say high income, we really mean really getting the per capita income up, because we are a sizably large economy even today. And by most reckoning, as I said, we will be a very large economy, certainly by 2047. Now, this book, of course, is endorsed by some of the leading luminaries, many of whom I have known, whether it's Vivek Debroy or C. Rangarajan or N.K. Singh and Vijay Kelkar, and it has many great ideas about what we need to do. So I was wondering what I can say that will add to this. So let me say that clearly we will have to carry out a large number of reforms, some of which are mentioned here. But I will talk about 3 major areas of reform that I think are absolutely critical for getting there in 2047. And I would like to contrast that with the kinds of reforms we did over the last 25 years. I'm not saying all of those things have been complete, but I think many of these are well on their way. So when we said reforms over the last 25 years, one of the things we really meant was essentially withdrawing the Indian state from doing the things it should not be doing. So this is why when you said reforms and you said liberalization, they almost meant the same thing. So for the last 25 years, it was about opening up sectors, getting rid, of course, of the license permit Raj, privatization, and so on. And of course, putting in place the regulatory mechanism for this more market-based system to function. So this was one large area of reform that has already been done. or even if it's not been done, it's now, these principles are well established and it's a matter of doing them now. It's not an intellectual debate anymore. The second big area of reform that over the last 25 years got done relates to infrastructure building. I'm not saying our infrastructure is perfect, but not only is it much better than it was in the past, again, the intellectual principle that we need better infrastructure and we need to get on with building it is now well established. So it's a matter of now doing it even if it hasn't been done yet. So the next phase of reform where we need to emphasize are somewhat different things. So the first area of reform that I want to highlight is the issue of process reform. Now let me contrast this with structural reform. You see, when we meant reforms, a lot of the reforms we talked about were structural reforms, which is about introducing the major or changing the frameworks in which we function. For example, introduction of GST or the introduction of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. But what I am arguing for are the much more boring nuts and bolts reform that get the processes of government going. So let me give a few examples of this. For example, India's patenting system, right? The patenting system already exists. What I am arguing is that this patenting system needs to be a scale bigger than it is today. So just to give you a sense of the numbers involved. Till 2016, India used to only give out 9,000 patents a year. Now, it's some effort at reform and process, improvements in process, adding numbers of people. That number has now gone up to somewhere around about 30,000 a year. But just to put it in context, the United States gives out 3.5 lakh patents a year. China gives out more than 5 lakh patents a year. Of course, many of them are low quality because they also include utility patents. But nevertheless, the point I'm making to you is that we need to think in totally different scales. And this requires that the current system, which in India takes between 5 and 9 years to give out a patent, surely cannot continue. I mean, in that time frame, many of these patents become irrelevant because technology is moving. So this is an area, by the way, as it happens to be, we at Prime Minister's Economic Council have taken it very seriously. We have pushed through a number of changes which are now hopefully making their way through the system. And we expect that within the next 24 odd months, our patenting system will have the capacity of doing almost 1 lakh of patents a year. If we get good enough patent pipeline, that is the capacity we will actually have. So just one example. Similarly, this relates to all the irritants in ease of doing business that are there in our processes. I'll again give you one illustration that I am currently working on, which is the Legal Metrology Act. Now, legal metrology is one of those rather obscure acts that nobody in general public cares about unless, of course, you happen to be doing business. This is the law that relates to weights, measures, and labeling. And every year, something like 1,20,000 or so cases are filed at the first instance, i.e. as first offenses under this act. Now let me tell you something interesting about it. When you do a first instance if your case is filed against you or you're hauled up for the very first time under this act, it is merely a fine. But if you're hauled up a second time, you can actually be sent to prison. Now let me tell you how interesting the numbers are. The cases filed at the first instance, as I said, add up to more than 1 lakh. But the cases in the second instance on which you can be sent to prison are only 12. So you can imagine the amount of rent seeking that happens by legal metrology inspectors on the ground level as a result of this act. And a fair amount of effort consequently is being made to decriminalize the provisions under this act. Some of them will happen under the Jan Vishwas bill, which is in Parliament already. But again, I'm giving you examples of the kinds of bells and whistles, process reforms that need to be done. So this is one big area of reform that we need to do. The second big area of reform we need to do relates to the administrative system, the bureaucracy, the civil service, whatever you may want to call it. Now, it is not that progress has not been made over the last 25 years, but the last 25 years of progress has not been by reforming the administrative system, but by actually withdrawing its powers. That is what liberalization was about. So basically we have the same bureaucracy, its ability to cause damage has been severely restrained now. So that is how our economy has grown. But every economy needs a bureaucracy or civil service in order to function. So the time has now come to get the bureaucracy to do the things it's supposed to do. So what is the problem? Well, usually, of course, everybody complains that this bureaucracy was really built during the colonial period, and that is true. And what did the colonial bureaucracy get set up to do? Well, it got set up essentially to impose control. That is why it ended up being called, by the way, the steel frame of India. This is the image of control. And this term, steel frame, ironically is used, is very often said to have come from Sardar Patel, but in fact the origin of this is from a British Prime Minister in 1920, just after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, when he actually used this term to commend the Indian service for having held down India from the chaos that could have happened after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So you can see what is the context in which the steel frame idea came from. It was about control. But after independence, when we should have recognized this and actually reformed the civil service, we opted, unfortunately, for a socialist pattern of economic management, which of course loved control. So rather than withdraw control, we actually gave our civil service even more powers. So post-independence Indian bureaucracy was actually even more powerful than it had been pre-independence, at least in the economic space. So we have ended up with this unreformed bureaucracy, even quarter of a century after the 1991 reforms. Its powers have, of course, been more restricted, but we now need to get on with it to do the things it needs to do. It needs to shift from the idea of control to the idea of service. It is, after all, the civil service. And that requires a major change in not just the mindset, but in the way we actually set it up. So let me give you an illustration, since this is just a short talk. Where does the rubber really hit the ground as far as the civil service and its services is concerned? Well, it turns out in things like, for example, the district magistrate or the municipal commissioner. This is where the administration really affects the people's lives. The district commissioner is almost the king of his or her district. But ironically, within the bureaucracy, the district magistrate is actually a very junior person. The average district magistrate is somebody around about 34 years old, 8 or 9 years into service, and probably has no real experience of running such a large space with millions of people living in it. Indeed, the average district magistrate is supposed to chair as many as 200 committees, which of course no district magistrate will ever be able to do. So what we need to do really is to make the district magistrate role, if that is where we are going to, how we are going to run our country, then we need to make the district magistrate a much more senior role, give that person a lot more resources, and of course, give them longer tenures. The average district magistrate stays in the district for barely 18 months. It takes at least a year to just understand how on earth the district functions. How do you expect that person to function? I'm telling you all of this because we very often complain about individual civil servants. But the fact is, while there may be bad eggs in there, there are also very talented civil servants in there as well. But it is not about the individual civil servant. The real problem is with the system, and the system is set up in such a way that the individual has simply no chance of succeeding. And this is also true similarly for the municipal commissioners. I mean, if the services, what services? Well, municipal services surely an important part of what the Indian state should be delivering, and again, the civil service is simply not set up for this purpose. Finally, let me come to my favorite area of reform that we need to do. We need to really do this in the next 25 years, which is to do something about our legal system. We cannot hope to be a developed country with 40 million and growing cases stuck in the legal system. If we are all claiming that this is going to be a prosperous economy that's going to be based on market-based systems, on entrepreneurship and risk-taking and so on, well, the basis of this entire model of economic growth is enforcement of contracts. And with so many cases stuck in the legal system, we simply cannot enforce contracts. Property rights will necessarily be unclear. And of course, I'm including in this basic things like law and order and police reforms. So this is this big area of reform, which of course cannot just be done by the government. It has to be done together with the judiciary. But this is some area of reform that we really need to get our act together. In fact, I've argued often that if there is one area of investment, that public investment, that would give the largest bang for the buck, it is investing in our legal system. With that, let me stop, ladies and gentlemen, and hand it back.
Thank you, Dr. Sanyal, for those very detailed listing of the reforms that are required. I'm sure, there is always this question of role of the state. I will talk about it a little later. The state, even with all the discussion that we have had, doesn't do what it should, and it does what it should not. And so on both ways, we need to really look at it, provision of basic public goods, which includes enforcement of, provision of property rights, enforcement of contracts, and safety and security of people. This is a basic thing that one talks about. And running alcohol shops or hotels or telecom systems is not the job that the government is required to do.
Or temples.
Or temples. So possibly in some of these areas where the markets function, you need to strengthen your regulatory system, not to prevent the thing, but then obviously to promote competition. That's where the most important thing is. But anyway, I will come to that in a little while. But it's a fairly comprehensive list of things. There are many more things that need to be done. We will talk about it. May I now request Charan Singh? Charan is a dear friend of mine. In fact, I always blame myself because I'm responsible for his doctorate. I happen to have been his examiner in Australia. So, well, he has done well in that sense. Thank you, Charan, for doing all that work. Now let me invite you to this.
So let me share some of the thoughts on the book. We have just received it, and I did have a chance to glance at it at depth. Firstly, I must congratulate Samir to have taken up this book size articles, and then focusing on financial inclusion in a big way, and of course, the equity part which he has mentioned. Looking back, I think we need to thank the Prime Minister who really rolled this idea to the economists about 4 years back when he spoke about the $5 trillion economy. And suddenly, all economists were thinking, yes, we have been only thinking about what is the projection for the next year, or maximum 3 years. Of course, we used to have long-term fiscal policy during VP Singh's time, But where were we thinking about a 5-year in the last few years? We had just given that up. So when the Prime Minister spoke about a $5 trillion economy and the economists started thinking about it, and then he brought to us the concept of India at 100. Now the whole country is focused about it, thinking about it, and writing on these issues. I was very fortunate at eGrow Foundation for NITI. We did a project started about 2 years back on India at 2047. We submitted our research to them. In the book, the articles that are there, and they're very, very well written articles, but 2 articles right at the beginning which are very important. One is by Bibek Debroy, where he speaks about India at 2047, but looks a little backward and traces history. And the next article is by Dr. C. Rangarajan, and where he talks about the future and the challenges that are going to come up there. One thing which is obvious and which we need to recognize is that the overall cake may grow, but the per capita income is going to be a challenge. And I think that is where the focus has to be. And after discussing for a few minutes about the book, I'm going to share some thoughts which focus on that. The per capita income story, we are lagging behind, grimly behind the rest of the world. And I think that is where we need to strengthen ourselves. Samir, I must thank you for this excellent work which you have done in this book and putting such excellent articles together. I really like the one which is all about transformation good and the Cobra effect and the super cycles. Of course, this is a beginning, and for all articles and for all work, there's always some good suggestions. And this article speaks about the green revolution, the second green revolution. I come from the part of India where I'm very familiar with the first green revolution, but then I was amongst the first few who was looking at the ill effects of the green revolution in Punjab. It's much later that during my work at Harvard, I met Michael Kramer, who later on won a Nobel Prize. While he was thinking about green revolution in Africa, and he did a very big project up there, the ill effects of green revolution in a way devastated Punjab and its economy. And therefore, when we speak about the second green revolution, we have to be very clear as to where are we thinking about locating it and what are the crops that we are really thinking about covering under the second green revolution. My own view is Northeast is a very fertile area, and probably the second green revolution, if to be brought into operation, should be located in Northeast. The other topic which came up in this Cobra effect chapter is on inflation targeting. And you know, the whole world has been talking about inflation targeting. It started in a very mundane way in New Zealand in 1988 on a radio talk. But I think India has done a great effort on this. I would like to attract the attention in a debate which Bimal Jalan had with, I think it was Donald from the governor of New Zealand, on inflation targeting, where Bimal Jalan argued that inflation targeting is too blinkered an approach. What we need is a multiple indicator approach. And that literature of Bimal Jalan seems to have been somehow overshadowed. And then, of course, the rest of the world quickly jumped onto the bandwagon of inflation targeting. Very few people, and I'm amongst the 3 or 4 people, who have flagged the issue of demographics and inflation targeting. While the Japanese have been speaking that they have an aging population, and how do they handle inflation targeting? Olivia Blanket, who was the chief economist at the IMF, challenged the 2% inflation target. I have looked at it from a different angle and said, in a young demographic country like India, which was just mentioned by the chairman of the session while introducing the book, the mean age would be 38 years. by 2047, a very young country. So would an inflation target, which is applicable to these advanced countries, which they have probably thought about, which is not applicable to the Japanese because they're saying too old, would it be applicable to India, which is very young? I think that thing needs to be thought through, and not enough research has been done on that. The research by Samir on financial inclusion in the book, I think, is very, very good. And what he has spoken about the task force at SKOCH, I thought is extremely good step. I would like to read from the book, and I thought this is very, very well-researched thing, where he speaks about the relationship between credit outreach gaps, which he has taken from Rangarajan Commission, the report which Rangarajan did in 2008. A negative correlation was found between state economic growth and credit outreach gaps. That's very good. The study is gone at a district level analysis, showing significant progress in narrowing credit outreach gaps at the district level, which is, I think, extremely good after Jan Dhan has been launched and has started showing results. However, nearly 1/3 of the districts in the country still faced severe credit outreach gaps. So there is so much more which yet needs to be done. The task force found that the percentage of households with access to clean fuel for cooking and the percentage of women with 10 or more years of schooling had a negative correlation with credit outreach gaps. So I think very well researched. A positive correlation was found between credit outreach gaps and multidimensional poverty, and MSMEs are generally negatively correlated with credit outreach gaps. I think this is a very policy-oriented research which has been done and which has been documented in the book. And I think further research needs to be done on this. Going further, I really like this article again by Tamil Bandhopadhyay on banking. And I think there's a lesson for us in this, where he mentions those banks which are changing in sync with time will survive and flourish. I'm so happy today, Punjab Sind Bank, a young bank, the smallest, the smallest bank, has got the prize for their innovation and research that they are doing. They're on the front edge of UNIC. Others that cannot change may turn into dinosaurs and find themselves in the Reserve Bank of India Monetary Museum at Fort Mumbai, which covers the evolution of money in India. I think this book is great in flagging the issue that unless change is brought in and change is accepted, it's going to create lots of dinosaurs. So I think the first thing that we need to be aware and we need to be alert and recognize is the need for a change that would happen by 2047. So I totally endorse what Vivek De Bruyne in his presidential address mentioned, that in 2047 we can't even imagine what will be the price distribution structure when probably Rohan will be standing here and distributing the prizes. So the change is going to be so rapid, and as rightly mentioned, even 9 years for a patent is too long because so much has changed within that 9 years. With that, I would now like to flag a few issues which I think for 2047 we need to cover. And a beginning has been made, the first book is out, I'm sure many more are on the way. While the Prime Minister did speak about the 5 trillion, and we all have now put our heads together and thinking about what India will be in 2047, I think as economists, we need to contribute a little more granular. India really can't become a developed country just by our own effort. Please remember, while we will be trying to gallop, the rest of the world is not going to be sleeping. They will be galloping too. And each one is in a race now, where we are number 3 in trying to be number one. I would like to remind you of Japan in 1980s. When Japan was trying to overtake America, you should read the Plaza Accord and the lower accords by which Japan landed up in one decade, second decade, third decade, totally wasted. I think we need to be prepared for it. China is already prepared, and I understand, and my friends from civil services would know better than I know, that China has been sending delegation after delegation to Japan to understand how they succumbed to the Plaza Accord and how the Chinese will have to save themselves from Americans trying to curtail their growth. More than what's going to happen to us from the rest of the world, more than where will we be then, because the rest of the world will also be galloping, we will have to think, where is the growth from within the country going to come from? Have we as economists identified how the states will grow, which state will grow by how much? And if we have to grow 5 to 15 times in the next 25 years, will UP grow by that pace? Or will Goa, a small state, or will Madhya Pradesh, a large state, grow by what rate? That thing, I think, has not yet been thought through. If Gurgaon could do what it did to Haryana, and Bangalore did what it did to Karnataka, have we identified states and their specializations and identified pockets which will become like workhorses for that state to grow multiple times? I think that thing we have yet not thought through. Northeast is one virgin area where much effort is being made, but the planning for those sister states is yet not there. Sectorally, yes, the trend is, and has been in the book and otherwise, that we have leapfrogged and services have overtaken industry, which was the long-term historical trend in growth stories and development theory. But then, in services, what are the sectors which are going to grow? And how are we going to strengthen it? The Prime Minister is making efforts at opening airports at places which are historical. But then, the ecosystem that has to come around that airport, has it started? And I think we need to contribute in that debate. The growth can never be completed without finances. Where is the money going to come from? And that's exactly where I think the role of banks, non-banking finance companies, and they are quite large even in America. In India, we are 1/3 of their share in America. The self-help groups and the microfinance institutions, partly covered in the book, but not totally, have yet not been discussed. I think in the last few years, we have thought about commercial banks, introduced new private banks, we have come with small banks, we have come with payment banks, but then what's the roadmap for the next 25 years? Not thought through. And therefore, I think we as economists have to really start putting our mind together and say, what is the roadmap? What will be the banking requirements? What will be the financials that will be provided by a commercial bank? Maybe, do we again need an industrial bank of India, unlike the NABARD and SIDBI? When it comes to the labor force, a point which has been discussed, and we have just had the new education policy, I've been wondering, and as you know, I've been working I am as a RBHA professor in the academic world. I have started thinking, given the job profile, the quality of education, and Narayan Murthy's comment, that how many of them are really employable? Do we need to produce that many postgraduates? Because each postgraduate is an investment of time. And I totally agree with Sanyal when he speaks about the civil services. The number of years young people in our country are spending to join the civil services, they are given 5 times, five opportunities, and on an average, 6 to 7 years of their youth, which is totally spent on preparing for the civil services. And I keep wondering, what type of a test is this for which I have to go to quota and prepare myself? Why can't a test be devised like the defense forces do under NDA? They immediately find out whether you have the acumen as a leader and can you take the risk and can you face the battle. So would civil services, which sap off so much of energy of our youth, come out with a test which is far better, more efficient. The last point that I want to make, well, on the labor force, also the need for skilling, and what type of skilling are we really looking for? Are we planning for the future? And if we are thinking of machine learning and artificial intelligence, the existing infrastructure on education may need to be revised. The last point I want to mention is, and I fall in that category and I'm not feigning it, is how are we taking care of the old and the elderly in our country? So the public finance will probably have to play a role, and with the longevity of life that is taking place, I think the elderly and the focus on the elderly need to be brought in because they are the most vulnerable in the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charan. You have identified a whole list of things that have been done and that have not been done. So, of course, that's fodder for the next book, nevertheless. Let me now call upon Dr. Sanjay Baru to speak on the book.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Let me first thank Samir for inviting me. I think this is the first time I'm at a SKOCH function. Last time I was here to see my wife receive an award. Second time, yes, of course. Anyway, always nice to be here. And compliment you on this book. The important thing about this book is the balance it strikes between growth and equity. The focus is not simply about, what is the size of the Indian economy 20 years from now or 25 years from now, whether we are big, we are small, but whether we are a more equal society or not, and whether this growth process would be more equitable or not. So the focus on high income with equity, which is this book, and the balance that you strike in the collection of essays between those which economists of my tribe who are obsessed with numbers and other social scientists who look at society, social systems, human beings, I think is a very valuable balance, and therefore I compliment you. In fact, when I was looking through the contents of this book, I was reminded of the report of the National Security Advisory Board of 1999-2000, of which I was a member, and I wrote the chapter on the economy. This is precisely the point that we made in that report. This was the first NSAB set up by Prime Minister Vajpayee, chaired by Mr. K. Subramaniam, a very distinguished strategist. And the point that we made in that report, and I mention this because we are now talking of 2047, which is 24 years ahead of us, and 1999 was 24 years behind us, and precisely 24 years behind us. We said in that report that look at India over the last 40 years, 50 years. We grew at 3.5% for about 25 years in the 50s and 60s as an average. We grew at 5.5% in the 80s, and we are now growing at about 7%, which is what at the turn of the century. And if we can sustain 8% growth over the next 25 years, with investment in human development, with investment in education and in healthcare, then India would certainly be a more secure nation, because the focus was on national security. And for national security, we said that the growth process should not just be accelerated, but be made more equitable. So in that sense, the views that are presented in this book echo the view of our first National Security Advisory Board. And I think they remain relevant even today. Second thing I'd like to say is that I agree with everything that's been said by the three speakers here. And I think each one of them has focused on issues which are important and relevant. So I will not repeat any of that, except to say that, long-term thinking is not new. I'm sorry, Mr. Singh. The first long-term thinking was done by a group of industrialists in 1944. And I edited a book along with Lord Meghnad Desai, re-looking at what was called the Bombay Plan, and I urge every student today, young people, to read that. Not because of its historical significance, but because of the way in which they conceived development. Here were, J.R.D. Tata, G.D. Birla, Purushottam Das Thakur Das, Lala Sriram, Ardashir Daral, John Mathai, who wrote this document called a long-term plan for India's economic development. The significance of that plan was it echoed exactly this balance. It talked about growth, industrialization with equity, focus on education, focus on healthcare, focus on housing, focus on providing adequate textiles for clothing every Indian. Not something we think of today, but in 44, large number of Indians were virtually naked because of inadequate purchasing power and poverty. And it was a 15-year plan. In 15 years, and then they worked backwards. How much cloth do we have to produce? How many bricks have to be made for every Indian to have a 2-bedroom house? How much steel? It's a fascinating document, which is how planning began. We thought long term. And it is good to think long term because it places what we do year to year within some perspective. So it's not the first time that when Prime Minister said $5 trillion, we've always thought big in the past also. The final point I'd make, because we have already crossed 12:30, and Mr. Chair, you've been very indulgent, so I will not take more of your time, is to emphasize only one thing which the others have not emphasized. Because we always compare ourselves with East Asia, with China, with Japan, with countries east of us, which have all been done impressively very well. Most of them were behind India 50 years ago, certainly 70 years ago. All of them are ahead of India. What is the one thing that they did which we have not done? I mean, there are many other things, but one thing was to invest in education. Wherever I have got an opportunity, I have repeatedly made this point, that today, the one thing that we need to focus on, to the 3 reforms that you mentioned, Sanjeev, please add education. Because we have the state has given up education as a priority. It's allowing private sector. All education from school to secondary to undergraduate to postgraduate to technical, let the private sector do it. It's not a job of the government. And in fact, I've sat in lectures where people say, oh, government is useless in education, government should get out of education. There is not a single country in East Asia where the government has got out of education. The Japanese are where they are because the government was in education. The Taiwanese are where they are because the government is in education. The Chinese are where they are because the government is in education. So that reform of your educational system, of your public universities, of your schools, which allows every Indian to aspire for a better life. I was recently in my home city of Hyderabad speaking at a session like this. A police officer who had been a senior police officer and resigned and set up a school was proudly speaking about Navodaya Vidyalayas. He said, I am here as a former police officer because in my village the government set up a Navodaya Vidyalaya. How many of we know about Navodaya Vidyalayas? Who is focusing on the reform and the funding of Navodaya Vidyalayas? We all read about my friend and Sanjeev's friend, Jaishankar, who was the foreign minister of India, bright young man. He was a product of Kendriya Vidyalaya. How many are focusing on the reform of Kendriya Vidyalayas, Navodaya Vidyalayas? Apart from Kejriwal, who has done something in education, I don't know of any other state government that is focusing on this. And you cannot be a China, you cannot be a Japan, you cannot be a Taiwan without education. So let me end by saying that of all the reforms we talk about for 2047 for India to be anything in the world, to count in the world, unless we educate our people, every single Indian is literate, is skilled, and can aspire, go up the ladder through acquisition of education. Because all the great examples of people who have done well in life are about people who have educated themselves and come up. And I think that is something that every Indian aspires for. We are now talking about education of the girl child. So I think this is something I would emphasize, that you cannot be silly to talk about whether you're 5 trillion or 10 trillion or developed country or whatever. If you have the kind of education, and let me just take 30 seconds more to say that the one development in the educational system which I really worry about, and I've written about this in my last book called India's Power Elite, is the growing number of schools in this country that are coming up to educate Indians to go abroad. India IB. The entire purpose of that school is to equip you to go to London or to Australia or to United States, and they advertise like that. You study here, we'll equip you to get out of India. And I've given the data. It's phenomenal. In the last 10 years, the number of schools that have come up. And recently, I was at some meeting where a businessman sitting next to me is saying, "Sir, why don't you write advocating more privatization of schools and allowing for-profit schools? There are so many people willing to pay higher and higher fees, and the government is not allowing us." Ye halat desh ki hai. So I don't think we can be, a great nation. So let us focus on one thing: education. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay, for those very clearly articulated views. Samir, do you want to make? I'll just make 2 or 3 points. We have already crossed time, but then I'll just take 5 points, just a point, and I'm not going to elaborate on that. One is, I think we still are not clear about the role of the state. The point that I mentioned earlier. The basic thing is protection of life and property, and enforcement of contracts, and in an expeditious manner. That still we don't do, and that's one of the legal issues. One of the major issues that we have. But then there are quite a number of other issues. Government doesn't do what it should. Government does what it should not. And I think that obviously, you need to really strengthen the regulation in places in order to ensure better competition. Predatory competition is not something which we need to really encourage. So obviously we need to have a more competitive system. When you are talking about 25 years ahead, we need to really look at the role of the state. Second thing is, this is what Sanjay said, development is for the people, and people are at the center. Now when people are at the center, human development is the most important thing. Professor Ramabaru has written a beautiful article on health, but then there is not much done on the education, the point that Sanjay was making. And we do need much stronger education. Oftentimes I wonder, the system of incentives and accountability that existed in the education system, or the culture of education that existed even in the government schools. When my brother went to school, he never went to a private school. He went to a government school, and a village school at that. And he eventually sort of was the chairman of the Space Commission. That's the, at the time when he started the satellite program, nobody knew what the satellite was. There was nothing of the sort. There is the book where a journalist has brought out recently, journalist called Prashant, Life and Works of U.R. Rao. And, that tells you what sort of the thing that one had to put up with. But anyway, so education is important, and skill development is important. Mind you, we are going to, younger population already is about, 30% of the total, up to age number 14. Now, you need to really educate them, and even at a higher level, skill development is one thing which we need to really focus if we really want. The third thing is, we need to be more open. The trend in the last few years has been to close. We go back to the protectionism, and that is not going to help us. If you want to be competitive, you need to be open. And, that's something which we need to think. I will not dwell too much on that. because more and more protection is going to hurt us more. And the growth and equity is not just about making investments and then technology and things. There are institutions. The institution is where you have a system of accountability and incentives. There's a beautiful paper written way back in 2000 by Mansell Olson. Basically dictatorship, democracy and development, where you talk about sort of early 20th century China, where you had a large number of roving bandits. So there was no incentive for, either growth. There was no incentive for growth anyway. So obviously one of the stronger roving bandits really killed a roaming bandit called White Wolf, and then told the people that, I will protect you. You give me a constant share of your income. So from anarchy, you moved into autocracy. And from roving banditry, you moved into a stationary bandit. So there was incentive for growth, incentive for investment. And if there is incentive for investment and growth, but then the growth was not encompassing because he couldn't care less for the poor people. And therefore, Mansell talks about moving over to democracy. But the basic idea there is, incentives matter, the institutions matter, and incentives and accountability matter. And we still have a situation where, in many places, you do not, legal system is one of them, but then we still have a situation where the nature of the institutions do not really have. You talked about to bureaucracy. That's a major institution. There is no incentives and accountability there. The culture has been in a different manner, and that needs to be done. And finally, the political competition that is emerging. Of course, the Prime Minister has been talking about the freebies. This culture is likely to go on. It's going to go more, because that's the one which gets you the elections. Now, market doesn't redistribute. Obviously, redistribution is important and then necessary. But do we really subsidize commodities, or do you really go into cash transfers? As we go further, obviously inequality, exists and could be increasing, and then possibly we need to really move into a cash transfer scheme rather than trying to provide more and more freebies, or distributing more and more employment letters. Let me put it this way: government is not in the job of creating employment. Government is in the job of creating systems and institutions to create employment. So obviously, we do need to there is a lot of work that needs to be done in the government itself and reform that the government has to do. I will not take any further time. Thank you very much. And it's an excellent book. It's an excellent initiative. And I'm sure there will be many more things that will happen, because we still have another 24 years to reach 2047. There will be a lot more things to be done, and I'm sure Samir will continue to do more and more work in this regard. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for summing up the discussion so well. And in fact, you rightly said that from what each speaker has presented, not only their reflections on the book, but also has opened up new vistas for further research and further insights which needs to be brought in towards India 2047. I'm sure the book serves a great purpose, but there is a lot that needs to be done. And probably to my mind, this is only road half traveled. Well, thank you very much for being with us. I thank Mr. Sanyal, Dr. Charan Singh, Dr. Kapoor, and Dr. Sanjay Baru for being with us. Thank you very much. And with this, we move on to the announcement of SKOCH Governance Awards. Thank you very much, sir. now request Mr. Samir Kochar to kindly join us on stage, and I also request Dr. Amarjeet Sinha to kindly do the honors, giving away a few of the SKOCH Awards for governance this year. Dr. Sinha, kindly be with us. He is a former Union Secretary and former advisor to the Prime Minister. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. The first award, category Transport, Silver, Directorate of Urban Transport, Uttar Pradesh, for operation of electricity buses in Uttar Pradesh. Dr. Rajendra Pensia, I invite you to the stage. I would request Dr. Pensia and his team to remain on stage because of another SKOCH Award. Silver, Urban Development, to Urban Development Department, Uttar Pradesh, Kanha Gaushala and Destitute Animal Shelter Scheme. Dr. Pensia.
सबसे पहले मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा स्कॉच ग्रुप को कि उन्होंने अर्बन डेवलपमेंट की जो 2 स्कीम्स जो माननीय मुख्यमंत्री महोदय की फ्लैगशिप स्कीम्स के रूप में हैं, एक तो ई व्हीकल्स और दूसरा कान्हा गौशाला। भारतीय संस्कृति और परंपरा में जीव दया आधारभूत तत्व रहा हमेशा, किंतु उसे मुख्य आधार दिया, मुख्य दिशा दी माननीय मुख्यमंत्री महोदय ने कान्हा गोवंश आश्रय के माध्यम से। एक और बात मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि अभी माननीय मुख्यमंत्री महोदय ने एक और बहुत बड़ी योजना की शुरुआत की है, जो श्वान वंशीय पशु होते हैं उनके लिए डॉग मैनेजमेंट मैनुअल और कान्हा गौशाला मैनेजमेंट मैनुअल का भी विमोचन उनके द्वारा किया गया। तो जीव दया के जो 2 पक्ष थे हमारे जीवन में कि पहली रोटी गाय को और अंतिम रोटी श्वान को, उन दोनों में उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार और विशेष रूप से नगर विकास विभाग विशेष कार्य कर रहा है। इसमें आपके द्वारा सम्मानित करने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
Our next award under the category E-Governance, Gold, to the Kerala Development Innovation Strategic Council for the Kerala Knowledge Economy Mission of Kerala Development and Innovation Strategic Council. Dr. P.V. Unnikrishnan, could you please join us?
Just one announcement in between, sorry for butting in. While SKOCH team is collecting the awards, these are being wrapped for you and kept outside the hall for you to take away while on your exit. Thank you.
Thank you, Sameer ji. I'm extremely grateful to the SKOCH team for offering this award. Now, a few minutes ago, we discussed about India in 2047. And Professor Govindrao talked about creating a system for employment. And this is precisely what we are doing in Kerala. The Knowledge Economy Mission is a mechanism for providing employment to the educated unemployed in Kerala. I hope this would be a model for India in 2047. Thank you.
Our next category, environment, goal to Gujarat Pollution Control Board, the vehicle location tracking system for hazardous waste transportation. Mr. Pankaj Pathak, could you please join us?
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of GPCB and entire team, I am very much grateful and thankful the jury of Scotch and the team of Scotch who have already they have guided through the entire process. We have developed one tracking tool for hazardous waste transportation, and we are glad to inform that more than 45 end users, stakeholders, including hazardous waste generating facilities and common facilities and other SPCBs on board, and they have well accepted, and 10,000 vehicles are registered and daily monitored. We have developed this project with team NIC Uttarakhand and Gujarat team. So we are very joyful today to have entire team on this platform. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Next category, finance, goal to Maharashtra State Excise Department for supply chain management system strengthening and extension. Dr. Vijay Namdev Rao Suryavanshi, please join us.
Thank you, Samir Kocherji and the SKOCH Group for recognizing and acknowledging our efforts toward this ease of doing business by developing this in-house supply chain module. My team has taken efforts to develop this module. I congratulate the entire team and thank you for encouraging us and motivating us to do further better. Thank you.
The next category, labor, goal to Labor Resources Department Bihar for child labor tracking system. Mr. Arvind Kumar Chaudhary, Principal Secretary, please join.
Thank you so much, SKOCH Group, for identifying the work done by the Labor Resources Department Bihar. Thank you, Amarjit sir, who has also been our teacher at the academy. I would like to tell that this is a tracking system which tracks every child who is rescued, child labor who is rescued from end to end, till he is finally settled and actually moves on in life. I am hopeful that very soon central government will also adopt this system, because unless there is a national system, it is very difficult to track a child, because child labor do not work only in one state. So thankful for SKOCH because this really puts it in the limelight. Thank you so much.
Just to add, he's too modest to say that Arvind is the person behind the Jivika movement in Bihar. He's given it leadership for 12 years. And completely the setup of the self-help groups in Bihar, which is in every village today, a lot of the credit to Arvind and the team. They've really worked very hard.
Our next category, police and safety. Gold to Coastal Security Group Tamil Nadu Police for Marina Beach Lifeguard Unit, being the first high technology unit in India to prevent deaths due to drowning in sea. Dr. Sandeep Mittal, Additional Director General of Police, will you please join us?
Marina Beach in Tamil Nadu is the second longest beach in the world. Every year about 100 people who are visiting the beach, mainly the unsuspecting tourists from all over the world, would drown and die. When I joined, we designed a program leveraging the technology, and we established an institutional mechanism in the form of Marina Lifeguard Unit. And I am proud to say that since the inception of this unit, not even a single death has taken place on Marina Beach. We have saved more than 104 lives so far in a year. Thank you very much, SKOCH Group, Samirji, Dr. Dhanjal, and the team for recognizing the effort of Tamil Nadu Police. We are grateful. Thank you.
May I invite Mr. Siraj Hussain to join me for the awards, the next slot.
Our next category, police and safety, gold to Noklak District Police for fighting drugs and insurgency with education and livelihood. Dr. Pritpal Kaur, you're invited on stage.
I would like to tell here, this is not only inclusive development, SKOCH has done inclusive recognition this time. And we, at the last corners of India, so Noklak is a newly developed district at Indo-Myanmar borders, last and the remotest corners of India. And there was a lot of problems, but though the tribals are very talented, but the problems were with respect to the drugs and the HIV and the insurgency, weaponries and everything. But then we thought we have to work holistically in every way. So along with preventing the crime, we have done a lot of initiatives, including the livelihood of all the farmers, all the drug addicts. 480 of the drug addicts, they have been rehabilitated. They are working on it. The food processing units are working on it, and the herbal products have been launched from their own units. The sanitary pads have been worked on, the libraries, and one of the sir was mentioning about the education. Sir, I felt that they all required equal opportunity what we all are getting. And they were very talented, they have excelled in it. And this is the result that our team has done that. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Sir, I would like to say the Northeast communities are they're very talented, self-sufficient economies. On behalf of them, sir, I would like to give a small token of gesture and the recognition from our tribes also, sir. I feel like we are the same tribes now. So this is for the Samir, sir. This has been hand woven made by the women there. Self-sufficient economies. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
The next category, rural development, gold to Panchayati Raj Department, Bihar, for Mukhyamantri Gramin Peyjal Nischay Yojana. Ms. Preeti Tangriya, please come on.
Namaskar. It's a moment of great pleasure to be here receiving this award on behalf of Panchayati Raj Department, Government of Bihar. I am very grateful to SKOCH Group and the jury for awarding us. Conceptualized by our Honorable Chief Minister of Bihar, Shri Nitish Kumar, and implemented under the guidance of Additional Chief Secretary, Shri Mihir Kumar Singh, Mukhyamantri Gramin Peyjal Nischay Yojana has been providing potable water to around 95 lakhs households by operating 67,000 schemes. So it is a complete blend of it. The scheme is a blend of interactive systems, hard work, willpower to provide a public good, that is potable water. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir, everyone. The thing is that the concept note of this one, the Mukhyamantri Gramin Peyjal Nischay Yojana, is also done by the Arvind Kumar Chaudhary, sir. I work under him, and thank you for the sir for this award. Thank you, sir.
Our next category, urban development, gold to Town Planning and Valuation Department, Maharashtra, for preparing need-based and implementable GIS-based development plans by participatory approach. I'd like to invite Mr. Avinash Balchandra Patil, Director Town Planning.
Good afternoon to all. This was the flagship program started by Honorable Chief Minister and under the guidance of Additional Chief Secretary of Maharashtra. The Directorate started public participation while preparing the development plans, and it was a very good experience interacting with people, and the aspirations of people were well reflected. It has resulted into reduction in the delay and reduction in the number of objections, and the people are accepting the development plans, which was earlier a different scenario. And we have done in one go 106 development plans in 2 years period, and all those 106 plans are now at a stage of getting approval by government. Thanks to SKOCH Group, Mr. Samit Kuchar, for recognizing the efforts, and also the jury. On behalf of the state government, Urban Development of Maharashtra, and the Director of Town Planning Maharashtra, we thank the SKOCH Group for recognizing our effort, and I dedicate this award to the team of Directorate, which have worked at district level day and night untiringly. Thanks.
The next category, Women and Child Development, gold to Women and Child Development Department, Haryana, for Mukhyamantri Dood Upar Yojana. I'd like to invite Mrs. Monica Malik, Director, and Mrs. Rajbala Kataria, Joint Director. category, Women and Child Development, Gold, to Odisha State Child Protection Society, Department of Women and Child Development, Odisha, for Scheme for Specially Cared Children. I invite Ms. Pritika Panda, Program Manager, on stage.
Thank you, SKOCH Group. It is recognition to Honorable Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik's dream and Ashirwad to the children, who more than 50,000 children who lost their parent during the
Next category, Animal Husbandry and Fisheries. Silver to Department of Animal Husbandry and Fisheries, Chandigarh, for e-governance. I'd like to invite Mr. Vinod Kamble, Secretary.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Samir Kocherji, and I also like to thank the jury for recognizing the work of the Animal Husbandry Department. Here I would like to state that though we all heard the eminent panelists speaking on development, bureaucracy, patents and all, but are we really working towards any development towards animals? Frankly, I say very little. And it is in this regard that we have taken an initiative wherein we, during the caring of animals, we also have provided them a system wherein, similar to a health card system, the animals being treated at the hospitals, or we reach them at the homes and get their records computerized for their continuation of the health care. Further, I would also like to add that this system of animal records will not only help taking care, but we have got response from other states like Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand to integrate this system in their states. And I think a step further will be to take this at a national level so that similar to health card, we have a health card for animals as well. If we don't take care of the animals, animals will always think that there's nobody for them. But we'll assure you that we are for the animals. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next award, under Disaster Management, Gold to Department of Fire and Emergency Services, West Bengal, for online services under West Bengal Fire and Emergency Services. I'd like to invite Mr. Manoj Kumar Agarwal, Additional Chief Secretary.
I'd like to thank SKOCH. They are having a very big association with West Bengal. They are picking up the projects which are being done there, amazing range of projects. And West Bengal Fire Services, we have got the oldest fire station in Calcutta. It was set up in 1824. At that time, we had horse-drawn fire engines. We have come a long way since then. And now we have, with the help of IT, we have set up a robust system where everything is online. There's no paperwork there in the entire office. Thousands and lakhs of applications are there for fire license and for fire approvals and NOCs. Everybody will appreciate who is in the business that it takes a lot of effort going around offices for fire licenses. We have implemented the Right to Public Service Delivery Act in toto. The time frame for the approval of each and every stage has been highlighted in the GO. One can just get the AIN number, that is the acknowledgement number after an online application, and see at what stage his application is there. And there's a appeal system also. As per the Act, we have introduced. So all the things are now online, no roaming around, no interface, and things are being disposed very fast. So I would like to thank SKOCH for culling out the best practices from different states, highlighting them at the national level, forming a documentation which will help posterity, which will help the entire system to become more modern, innovative, and transparent. And I would thank my 10,000 strong force in the fire department of West Bengal. I think this is the only state where we have got a full-fledged department for the fire services, because we think it's a very important piece of work. And it has got emergency services also there, where we did a lot of work during COVID and other natural calamities. So I would thank SKOCH for the recognition, for the full team.
The next category, District Governance, Gold, to SC and SC Development Department, District Administration Gajapati, for library promotion activities in primary and upper primary schools. I'd like to invite Mr. Lingraj Panda.
I'd like to thank the SKOCH Group for recognizing the work from Gajapati district. It's a very remote district, tribal dominated. We have tried to work in education for children there. Thank you so much. Thanks.
The next category, Ease of Doing Business, Silver, to Industrial Promotion and Investment Corporation of Odisha, for single window of investor facilitation and tracking, Go Swift 2.0. I'd like to invite Mr. Shantanu Kumar Panigrahi.
We are really grateful to SKOCH Group for awarding this honor to us. We, Artificial Government of Odisha, provides a single window platform for the investors, so which enable them to do their business safely and in a hassle-free manner. My friend Akash will brief on the technicalities of this.
Good afternoon, everyone, and we are also really thankful to SKOCH team. Last year also, 2020, we have bagged the National E-Governance Award in the silver category by the central team. Similarly, and as it is the dream of our honorable CM that no one should visit the office, even the industrialists or investors or anyone. So everything should be an online, and it is under his leadership and vision, we have make it an online platform, and which has been replicated by the national single window system of the central government. Thank you.
The next category is Ease of Doing Business. Silver, to the West Bengal Small Industries Development Corporation, for marketing support to MSMEs through WPS IDC during Yash, Amphan and COVID period. I'd like to invite Mr. Deepak Teja. category, Education, silver, to the Directorate of Higher Education, Chhattisgarh, for assessment and accreditation. I'd like to invite Ms. Shraddha Verma, Commissioner.
Thank you, Scotch, for bringing our assessment and accreditation from scratch to top-notch. We have been 32 government colleges which have been accredited in 2020 June, and now we are 202 government colleges which have been accredited by NAC. As we say, education is nothing but educate the nation. And what we are doing is we are accrediting all the government colleges with the help of National Assessment and Accreditation Council. 32 to 202 is a Herculean task for us, and that too in a state like Chhattisgarh, which has been highly dominated by Naxals, and also there are limitations and challenges. With all those limitations and challenges, with the support of all the government colleges staff and also the Education Minister, Secretary and Commissioner, we have reached to this target. And NAC has also accredited our state as one of the state which is having the highest accredited colleges. And for that, quality is the basic motto for all of us. And as far as education is concerned, which has not been given any prominence in most of the states and also in the country, we are bringing education to the core, and we are making education as the quality education. Thank you, Scotch, for recognizing us.
The next category, Finance, silver.
Just 1 second. May I invite Dr. Charan Singh to hand over the next round of awards?
The next category, Finance, State Taxes Department, Jammu and Kashmir, silver. I'd like to invite Dr. Rashmi Singh, Commissioner.
Okay, so I'm joined by Mr. Shakil Makbul, who's our Additional Commissioner from Kashmir. And with this, first of all, I would like to congratulate the entire team from Kashmir Division, from Jammu Division, who have been a part of this very, very Herculean exercise of making this one nation, one tax, regime of GST, a fusion in the heaven spirit. So I dedicate this award to each one who's made it possible, despite braving so many challenges. And I would like to compliment the Scotch team for having been take us the entire thing through a process by which this story could be untold in some ways. And Sameer ji, you in particular, for having carried this process, I think, for so long, which is incredible. I can see it's the 92nd summit and 92 times. And so I also would like to congratulate each of the other awardees over here who have traveled, such milestones in different ways of like inspiring each other. And with this, just the small journey of GST and the task, and I would like to mention that here was again a department, especially last year, we were changing from like a regulatory mindset to a more of promotive mindset by a campaign which we call Kar Tavya. So it's tax is Kar. It's a kartavya, but the nudge for what? Nudge to see that all of us have to be a part of the development process. All of us are a part of the growth story. So that's it. And Shakil, I would surely like you to put in a word too.
Thanks a lot to the SKOCH Group. I would like to reflect on what we have tried to do in terms of moving taxation from an adversarial relationship to a collaborative and facilitative one. And I think SKOCH Group has, their jury has recognized that, and I would like to thank them for that. Thank you.
Pleasure. The next category, Forest, Silver, State Taxes Department, Jammu and Kashmir for the Forest Department firm app. I'd like to invite Dr. Shashi Kumar, Chief Conservator of Forests.
First of all, my sincere thanks to SKOCH Group for this award. A small correction, I am not from Jammu and Kashmir, I am from Tripura Forest Department. So, the awards which are given to various works taken up in the northeastern part of the country seems to be very, very lesser in number. But I am very happy that next to Nagaland, we also have been recognized for one small initiative that we have taken up in the Forest Department. This is an in-house app developed by the department for one-point monitoring of all the development and protection related works of the Forest Department. This can be replicated by all other states, and thank you very much, SKOCH, for bringing this app in limelight. Thank you.
I'm sure it will go a long way in inspiring a lot more people in Northeast to follow in your footsteps.
The next category, Governance, Silver, Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Good Governance and Policy Analysis, Madhya Pradesh, for Chief Minister's Young Professional Development Program. Mr. Lokesh Sharma, please join us on stage.
Thank you for the recognition, SKOCH Group. I think this is one of the unique intervention by Government of Madhya Pradesh, where reaching out to the last mile for strengthening service delivery and citizen-centric services, we engaged youth. One research associate in each of the district, but more importantly, they have engaged about 15 interns, young interns in each of the blocks. So about 4,700 people working out to strengthening the scheme delivery, to identifying local issues, documenting it systematically. Today the impact is that in last 1 year, they have connected with about 25 lakh beneficiaries to bring them under the ambit of the scheme, help them get benefit of the scheme, specifically people who were not able to move out to get the services, old age, pregnant women, specially abled. So they are ensuring that the governance in some sense is reaching out to the doorstep of some of these beneficiaries.
Congratulations.
The next category, Health, Silver, Department of Health and Family Welfare, Punjab, for screening and management of hepatitis C among PL HIVs in Punjab. I'd like to invite Dr. Adarsh Pal Kaur, Director.
Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I thank you, SKOCH Group, for recognizing our efforts towards people living with HIV. And the pioneer of the program is along with us, Dr. Gagan Grover. I would like him to say 2 lines about the program.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, SKOCH Group, for this award. In this intervention, we specifically targeted people living with HIV because they have immunocompromised state and they are more prone to other diseases. So hepatitis C diagnosis, screening and management was done among HIV positive patients at the ART centers itself without patient moving out, with support of NACO and Punjab State AIDS Control Society. It was the first intervention in the country and then taken over to the other states. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next category is municipal governance, silver, to Sagar Smart City Limited for construction of Shield Lounge, Mahila Suvidha Grow. I'd like to invite Mr. Chandrasekhar Shukla, Executive Director and Municipal Commissioner.
सभी को नमस्कार। सागर स्मार्ट सिटी द्वारा महिलाओं की सुविधाओं के लिए जो कार्य किए गए हैं उसको प्रोत्साहित करने और प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए स्कॉच ग्रुप का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद एवं आभार। आपके इस पुरस्कार से हमारी टीम को और भी ज़्यादा बेहतर ढंग से काम करने की प्रेरणा मिलेगी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
The next category, power and energy, silver, to Tamil Nadu Generation and Distribution Company Limited for smart indigenous fiber optic communication system. Mr. P. Muthaiya, Additional Director, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On behalf of Government of Tamil Nadu, I thank you very much for this award for TANGETCO. We are implementing fiber system in our Tamil Nadu. Very good manner. Thank you, sir.
Power and energy, silver, Maharashtra Energy Development Agency for Pradhan Mantri Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Utthan Mahabhiyan. I'd like to invite Mr. Ravindra Sopan Rao Jagtap, Director General.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, SKOCH Group and honorable dignitaries. MEDA is designated agency for renewable energy, and MEDA has done so many renewable projects for last decades, and we are always getting awards, but SKOCH Award is the first time. We hope that every year we will be here henceforth. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. The next category, rural development, silver, for Panchayati Raj and Rural Development, Government of Andhra Pradesh for Amrit Sarovar. I'd like to invite Mr. P. Tataiya, Director. Next category is skill development, silver, Bihar Skill Development Mission for recruit, train and deploy. I'd like to invite Mr. Arvind Kumar Chaudhary, Principal.
you so much, SKOCH Group, for identifying the skilling efforts of Bihar Skill Development Mission. Thank you so much.
Social Justice and Security, silver, for the Department of Non-Resident Keralite Affairs for economic reintegration of returnee migrants and Pravasi Bhadrata scheme. I'd like to invite Mr. P. Sri Ramakrishnan.
It is very proud to be here on the occasion of award given by SKOCH Group. My throat infection, that's why I can't speak more. As far as Kerala is concerned, 3.5 million population is in abroad. We are bound to take the responsibility of the returnees, those who are coming from abroad. For the economic reintegration, we are having different schemes, almost 18 schemes. For example, NDPRM. Last year we had celebrated as the Entrepreneur Year. Entrepreneurship can be done through this NDPRM scheme. We almost 12,000 enterprises has been started because of the initiative of NORCA and its subsidy and loan. The banks, those who are not ready to approve the loans, we bring that together and had a facilitator in between banks and entrepreneurs. In such a way, we could organize 12,000 enterprises in last year. The level of confidence became high because of this intervention of NORCA. NORCA is an agency which has deal with the non-resident Kerala affairs and as well as returns those who are coming from abroad. Thank you.
Tourism and Culture, silver, to the Art, Culture and Youth Department, Bihar, for Kinnar Mahotsav. I'd like to invite Mr. Deepak Anand, Additional Secretary.
Thank you so much for giving this award to Art, Culture and Youth Department, Bihar. बिहार को किन्नर महोत्सव के आयोजन के लिए यह कला संस्कृति युवा विभाग बिहार सरकार को यह अवार्ड दिया जा रहा है। यह अपने आप में एक अनूठा प्रयास है बिहार सरकार का। किन्नर समुदाय, जैसा कि आप सभी जानते हैं, बिल्कुल अलग थलग और उपेक्षित समुदाय है। तो बिहार सरकार ने यह प्रयास किया है कि उनको मुख्य धारा में, समाज की मुख्य धारा में जोड़ा जाए, उनको आजीविका से और उनको कल्चरल प्लेटफॉर्म दिया जाए ताकि वो भी समाज की मुख्य धारा में हिस्सा बन सके। हम सब अपनी ओर अपने लिए सोचते हैं। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा है कि सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास। तो इसी कड़ी को आगे बढ़ाते हुए हम लोगों ने LGBTQIA+ जो समुदाय है उसको समाज की मुख्य धारा में लाने का प्रयास किया है, जोड़ने का प्रयास किया है। शैलानी जी की एक शेर है, मैं उसी से अपनी बात खत्म करूंगा कि चमन में इख्तिलाफ ए रंग ओ बू से बात बनती है। हम ही हम हैं तो हम क्या हैं, तुम ही तुम हो तो तुम क्या हैं। धन्यवाद।
Urban Development, silver, to the Urban Development and Housing Department, Madhya Pradesh, for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. I'd like to invite Mr. Bharat Yadav, Managing Director.
First of all, thank you SKOCH Group for this recognition. This is just a project every state is doing, but we have done good work in MIS and completion of the houses in Madhya Pradesh. Around 5,50,000 houses are complete, and this is a good scheme for urban poor, and we are doing in very well manner, and thank you for this recognition, SKOCH Group.
Mr. Bharat, Mr. Yadav, you are requested to stay on stage as there is another Scotch award. Urban Development Silver to the Madhya Pradesh Urban Development Co. Limited for Dharampuri Sewage Collection Treatment and Disposal District Dhar.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Extremely thankful to the SKOCH Group for the recognition. Our Honorable Chief Minister has been working tirelessly to clear the area around the lifeline of MP, Ma Narmada River. As a part of that project, with the help of the World Bank, we have developed 100% coverage in a small town, Dharampuri. We call this project the Nirmal Narmada. Dharampuri gets its name from Dharamraj Yudhishthir, and I'm happy to share that 100% of the houses have taken a correction under the sewerage project, which is otherwise something that not everybody demands and doesn't want to get that work done. We also used a new technology in this. It's called the small bore solid freeze systems, which does not dig too deep, and we had extensive IEC, and this paves the way for new small towns to go for 100% sewerage. We see excellent results in the improved health indicators of the people there. Thank you again. Thank you, sir.
Urban Development, Silver, to the Pune Metropolitan Region Development Authority for Pune Metro Line 3, Man Hinjawadi Shivaji Nagar. I'd like to invite Ms. Reenash Pathan, Chief Engineer.
Thank you so much, SKOCH Group, for recognizing us. Pune IT City Metro is a PPP project with a joint venture of Tata and Siemens. It's a 23-kilometer metro line from Pune city to Hinjawadi, and Hinjawadi is the IT hub of Pune and of course Maharashtra. Thank you so much.
This is the first project running on PPP basis, DBOFT basis. दिस इज पीपीपी पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप बेसिस पे ये पहला प्रोजेक्ट हो रहा है, जिसका भूमि पूजन माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया है, और टाटा सन्स सीमेंस ये दोनों कंपनी का जेवी से काम चल रहा है। ये काम पूरा होने का समय 40 महीने का है, और उसके हिसाब से अभी 40% टाइम भी हुआ है वर्क ऑर्डर देके 16 महीने का, और उसके हिसाब से प्रोपोर्शनेटली प्रोग्रेस भी हो रहा है। DBOFT डिज़ाइन बिल्ड फाइनेंस एंड ऑपरेट इस बेसिस पे और पीपीपी पे सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की जो 2017 की पॉलिसी है उसके हिसाब से ये पहला ही प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है। इसके लिए PMRDA ने पूरा लैंड कंसेशनर को इन टाइम दिया है। इसके लिए हमारे कमिश्नर सर, एडिशनल कमिश्नर सर और चीफ इंजीनियर उनका बहुत बड़ा प्रयास है। उसमें हमारी एक चीफ इंजीनियर लेडी है, उन्होंने ये पूरा प्रोजेक्ट लीड किया है। ये और भी अलग सी बात है। दिस इज़ द unique project led by Lady Chief Engineer in Maharashtra. Thank you very much for this SKOCH Group.
Urban Development, Silver, Ayodhya Development Authority for the conservation, augmentation and preservation of water bodies in Ayodhya. I welcome Mr. Mahindra Kumar Singh, Officer on Special Duty.
धन्यवाद। अयोध्या डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटी जो कार्य कर रही है उसके लिए इस मंच पर जो आपने सम्मानित किया है उसके लिए पूरी अथॉरिटी की तरफ से आपको, आपके पूरे स्कॉच ग्रुप को धन्यवाद।
I'd like to thank Mr. Kochar, Professor Charan Singh, Dr. Sinha and Mr. Hussain for the presentation of the awards. Thank you all for coming. With this, we come to the end of the 92nd SKOCH Summit, the India Economic Forum. Before we go, there are a few announcements. Please pick up your awards outside the hall. There will also be a group photo outside the hall arranged for you. If you'd like to purchase a copy of India 2047, there will also be an author signing by the author. Lastly, lunch will be served on the first floor and SKOCH team will be there to escort you. Thank you.